this time, with how much appreciation. Thank you. So let me give you a little bit of history about why we're here. Problems and issues in the volunteer fire service are, they've been around for a long time. The entire fire service in Ohio has been up for a long time. And when I talk about the fire service in Ohio, I don't talk about volunteer, combination, career. I talk about us all as one. We are one fire service in Ohio. We just deliver our services a little bit differently. That's the only difference. The training is the same, everything else is the same. So we're one fire service in Ohio. We've known these issues for a long time. And I'm not sure what the thought process was over the years. We talked about hoping that, you know, some of these challenging positions would better go away on their own. But as you all can tell, that's just not working. Hope is not a plan. So working with the governor's office and the governor's wine, we started last year to talk about some of these things. And the outcome of that was the establishment of the Ohio Volunteer Fire Service Task Force, the governor's wine established back in 1980. The purpose of the task force is to learn about the challenges and issues that you're having, and also listen to you about what you think some possible solutions are. We're not here today to make promises. I'd like the checkbook at home. I'm sorry, there's no checkbooks today. But we're here to listen. And so far, this is the third roundtable session we've had, statewide. And we've got outstanding input from the volunteer community. So we really appreciate that positive input. We can't do this without your help. We can't do it without your help. So the process of what we're doing right now, we're doing 6 meetings total statewide like this. This is number 3. We've got 3 more after this. After that, our last meeting, I think, is in October. Our last roundtable is in October. We will take and gather a lot more thoughts and suggestions, look at them and start to analyze and talk about what we think are some possible solutions. At the same time, hopefully, in late, I'm going to say late September at this point, we're going to try to get a survey out to all of the volunteers from Ohio. There'll be 2 surveys. One survey is for your everyday volunteer. We want to know why you want to volunteer, how long you've been a volunteer. A lot of questions that get into the nitty-gritty of why you do what you do. We're going to have a separate survey for the chief. Because from the chief, we want to know some different information. We want to know how old your fire department is. That's one thing about it. Simply because there are a lot of old volunteer fire departments in Ohio. We need to celebrate them. We need to know that. But as a state, I can tell you that. I was in Pomeroy, Ohio, about 3 months ago to help them celebrate their 175th anniversary of the volunteer. That's something to talk about. That's something to celebrate. And we've got that all throughout the state. We just don't know. So I want to know how long you've been around. We also want to know how big your jurisdiction is. We want to know for the chief how you're funded. We want to know what your budget is. We want to divulge that to us. A lot of questions that are very deep into how you operate. We need to know that information. So when those surveys come out, please participate. Don't ignore them. Please participate so that we can get some good results. After we get the survey back, we've done the roundtable, probably at the end of this year, we'll start to put all that together as a task force committee, and we'll start working on recommendations to the governor. Our deadline is to give the governor an initial finding by June 1st of next year. And he actually wants it tomorrow. The sooner we can get this to him, the better. Because he knows it's going to have some budget. So, I can get it. We can get it. Then, the task force just doesn't go away after that initial report is due. We will still be around. I think we'll be trying to work on implementing some of the things that we've recommended, and also kind of continuing this dialogue on how to make this better. So, that's enough. I'd like to take and introduce, we've got several staff here from the Marshal office. Chief Plowman in the back is from he's the chief of our Fire Prevention Bureau. We've got some other support folks. Andy Ellinger on the end here is our PIO. Rachel in the corner is our special projects manager for the Department of Commerce. And everybody else on the task force. So at this time, I'd like the task force members to introduce themselves. They'll tell you what group they're representing. You'll notice that this is just all fire service folks. We've got even as opposed to other organizations. And our task force members, some of them are so dedicated to this. I've got to brag a little bit. One person left their home at 4:30 this morning, the other one at 5 o'clock to get here. So it's that important to them that they did things. So it's good. So let's start. John, lead us off.
John Loeb with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation.
Zach Wolf, Ohio State Firefighters Association.
Good morning, Aaron Jennings, Ohio Division of EMS.
Good morning, Mark Stahl, Ohio County Commissioner. I'm representing the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. So I tie into,
Morning, I'm Ed Colesville, Fire Chief of Rome Township, Ashtabula County, and I chair the finance.
Jack Smith, I'm the chair with the chief of state fire academy and chair of the training center.
Early days with the Ohio Society of Fire Service.
Aaron International Society of Township Fire Department, Jackson County, Scotland.
John Finley, and then Fire Department, leading with Donaldville, Ohio. Serve the chair of a lot of our council.
Okay, our online folks, can we introduce them? I know we've got some of the other task force members online.
Matthew Jacksetic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Jacksetic. I'm chair of the Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee.
Chris Tondo's on there.
Go ahead, Matt.
Got John on here. Kyle Miller.
Okay. So our format, what we're going to try to do is the first hour. We've allotted 2 hours. But I will tell you, our first meeting in Wayne County is 3. Move 3 hours without a break. So we'll be here as long as we need to be to get the information, and to talk to you as long as we need. The first hour though, we'll take in-person comments from all of you. Then we'll take maybe a 5-minute break in between. Then we'll do the online questions. And after that, we'll come back and fill in any time as we have left. See if you have any questions before we begin, because at this point, I'm going to sit down, be quiet, and get this thing started. Where do we want folks to stand, Andy? If we got a microphone, we'll bring out to you. Okay? Let's start. Not everybody at once. Okay.
I'm Terry Person from the Star Township Fire Department in Union First, Ohio. Biggest thing I came to talk about is the March radio system, which I understand has been brought up before. Our area does not have good Marks coverage. We have one tower that's cobbled together that needs fixed. It's been kind of out of commission for about 8 months. Have it patched together to work, but we're paying user fees on radios that do not work in our area. And he get service on them. We have a new radio block that we paid for and haven't got yet. And, yeah, that's basically with Mark radios. Yeah, hard to do a job when you don't have good communications. And state kind of got sending these Mark radios, and then state kind of bailed on them.
You talked to the DAS program office, the Dick developer.
Yeah, I've walked in the room that I've done this and actually, yeah. He just basically said, you know, they'll get to it when they get to it. Yeah, the one radio in our area, one tower was hit by lightning last year. And they used a bunch of parts off of the sheriff's department radio to kind of keep it up and running, but it's not fixed. Parts aren't made. It's a very important system to keep ignored. And then, like I said, you used to pay $10 a month for radios that don't work in our area. That's the only other thing I got is for volunteers. There should be some kind of a state payback for volunteers. You know, in my case, I've been me and my assistant chief both 39 years in the department. Yeah, every run costs us money. There's nothing from the state that says, hey, I want to thank you guys here. Here's a tax rise for your mileage, for your fuel, for your time. If the state wants to increase volunteerism, they need to make it easier for people to volunteer for time. That's about all I had to say for this much.
My name is Eddie Williams. I'm with Plains Volunteer Fire Department, and I've been actively serving for 55 years. My question is why is getting in your turnout gear and SCBA a pass-fail situation for the 36-hour training course? It's not necessary.
Can you give us a little bit more on what specific problems that you had or that the office?
Oh, okay. This is about getting volunteers. If you have a rookie come in, takes a 36-hour course, and then in the 2-minute time allotment for him to either pass or fail the 36-hour course, he has to don his turnout gear and SCBA. That's not very encouraging for that person when he fails. And that's also not getting us volunteers. Out in the volunteer situation, our people come to the station, they put their gear on to get in the trucks. We have air packs mounted in the seats. We may have 5 to 8 minutes drive time to get to the scene. So I don't see where the 2-minute drill is necessary. I don't know why it's required that an individual, a brand new rookie, has to pass that to pass and get his 36-hour card. It makes no sense. My understanding, they're not supposed to go inside a burning building anyhow. So, yeah, to me, it's totally wasted. It's worthless. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Any comments from the faculty? I think it's a very good tool. Yeah. Yeah, we've not heard that. So, good first.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I need a mic straight out without it. My name is George Moore, I'm the fire chief of Green Township, Slugger County. Little history on myself, but always use the theory of life 50 miles away from home's an expert. I'm not. But I do have 57 years of experience in the fire service. My previous life, I worked 38 years at US Bank on financing many of fire trucks and fire equipment. So my experience with the fire service, financial and whatnot is deep. And I come from the side of where I'm at today is kids today have no interest in being volunteering in anything. If you can't pay somebody to work, how do you get someone to volunteer? You may have heard this before in all your other meetings. One thing I think we might do that might make it a little easier for these technical kids. In our basic training, we bring them to a vocational school or whatever, 1,000 men, require them to come to class. We go to an online thing for these kids where they can take the class online, come and do the practice, face to face, of course, but do their online training. That way, with their leisure, get the course under their belt. And I'll be the first believer in this is the training really doesn't start until they come to our station and start working on our equipment and we train them. What you're doing sets a nice little blend of what they learn the three terminologies and whatnot. But the real skill set that happens when they come to the station and learn from the old kids. But if you can look at something where let these kids be able to do it from home at their leisure time in their own tech, it may help us get a few kids. Something else, I always look for the young people. I'm a huge believer in watching for liability in my department. When we look at liability, I look for a junior fire program. That junior fire program, to me, adds to liability. I know we had one, and I wasn't comfortable with it, but if the state can come up with some sort of junior fire program that they put together, they help us manage our liability. So we're doing this the proper way, state liabilities there. And let's get these kids interested in a young day. I know many schools, many high schools are looking to get their kids to do something to volunteer outside at their school. It's an ideal, pockets in the pants situation. If your school is looking to get kids to volunteer in the community and you have a junior fire program that was well planned, well orchestrated, that could feed into a nice school. That's exactly how I started 57 years ago as a junior in high school. Our school, when we heard the siren go off, we were allowed to leave school and go on fire. That was a pretty good deal in my school. You got out of school there. But we got to incentivize these young kids a way to do it. And today, our young kids, everybody got a trophy for participation. It wasn't how well you did and how well you're doing. Nothing there, it's just participation. We're not teaching our kids the proper way. And that's all our resource in fun getting our people in fire service is the younger. If you look around this group, pretty much old kids here. And as I talk to the fire marshals, as they come around, as they go to different departments, they even say, what's going to happen with fire service? All we see is older guys. We do not see the young people in there picking up the load. What do I see that? So we can look at some way to incentivize the young, change our thought pattern, make the young look at this in a different way.
Those are great issues. I can tell you, the folks that look at generational differences, they'll tell us that we've got two generations that just don't have a lot of interest in public safety. They're interested in other areas. And along with that is volunteers, there's not a spirit of volunteering. These same people will also tell you that we should be talking to the 14 and 15-year-olds right now. Because that's the next group that will have the interest that we're looking for. So that still gives us a problem of 45 years getting through what we're at right now to get to that point, to get those. The cadet program is a great idea. They are where they are. We've seen them do a lot of good things. I was at the school over at Nelsonville at the Huntington Tech a couple months ago when they had the summer school over there. They had 38 students and 4 from out of the state. So there's a lot of things like that, just not enough. With regards to training, I'm going to refer to Chief Bed because he's been looking at some interesting developments beyond Ohio, what other states are doing for training to address that the issues of the 36 hours. That's the best way I can put it together.
Yeah, first of all, Chief, I wanted to follow up on your point here. When you say could the state develop a program, kind of focused at your concerns about additional liability, what do you envision that looking like, or how can we help lessen our liability?
That's exactly what I'm looking for, right? If it's organized and working under one project, we got one organization, And, we can talk to attorneys, but that's what I'm looking for. You guys got a legal counsel, I'm sure, if they could help us develop it, sort of protect us as much as we can from being liable for things. But when you involve younger kids, you got to be really careful with the age, years ago, you didn't have that problem. Today, you do. Litigation is there all the time, so. But if they could just help us, right the first, protect it from the backside, then we wouldn't have to get into litigation, somebody's protect us.
So that you can show that you had the right processes and procedures in place, the right training, the things that were allowed and not allowed to do, sometimes some guardrails.
I show you how important it is. We're insured through BFIS insurance. If you look at BFI insurance, they have a program out there for the junior program to try to help you orchestrate the document. So obviously, they're our insurer, they're protecting us for our liability. If they're willing to create a program, that's showing liability, or if your insurance company is seeing that something they need to address. But you might have to better BFIS insurance.
I know years ago, the Boy Scouts, I started as a cadet in '16, but our neighboring department had a support program for the Boy Scouts. Provided some liability.
Big issue with the Boy Scouts these days is the cost. The regular annual fees for the Boy Scout is skyrocketing. It's $100 or something, just we have a number of the trip now. And then that's not counting the liability insurance, there's the other things you have to cover, and the rule set that goes along with it. I mean, it's nice to have guidelines in place, but when we looked at the Explorer program for the city of Wellston, the guidelines for Boy Scouts Explorer for the fire service was very, very high. They really made it difficult to truly get much accomplished for the students of how to control their guidelines. I mean, I just kind of on his point, a nice aspect or thought from the state, we'd even look at kind of a chartering of the junior programs to where you can put out state guidelines that would fall under, and then, maybe the state could even assist in subsidizing some type of a liability insurance through those departments at a rate, because the state, obviously, if they put everybody together, they get much lower rates for these students. I know the state can't insure them, but the state can help potentially orchestrate a more organized and lower cost for departments to be able to do that.
The WVU offers the junior fire academy weekend. I think they posted it about a month ago. It was hundreds of students from all out. They get them a shirt, they do more live training. Level 2, they take it to. What program is that? WVU. And they put their airplane simulator, or simulator up and actually get see fire. I mean, that's what keeps them interested. I mean, you start to, like Bill said, 5 years, you can do anything, stay interested.
With the workers' compensation of the role of it is. That all those volunteers are taking the workers' compensation.
You're paying $1.
John.
Even if you never get your dollar, you're paying $1 here on paper for something.
I did write a couple notes down, so there is a workers' comp coverage for volunteer fire departments. It has a rather convoluted payroll reporting structure that you're nodding your heads about. Just recently, what the parallel I was drawing in my mind, there was some legislation passed that had to do with individuals coming up through vocational programs through schools, or kind of apprenticeship programs through some of the skilled trades, where there is a coverage option kind of offered for those individuals, or if they happen to be injured, we will cover the claim, but the cost doesn't kind of flow back to the employer in that case, as far as their insurance rates. So there might be some parallels there that we can certainly take a look at from our end.
I'll speak on that.
Okay, so with one of the things Marshal Greer mentioned, the Explorer stuff, Dave, you've been with us with that, Gary, you've been with us. A lot of things that we focus when we deal with the Explorer programs, where it comes into it, and Chief, to your concern, it does fall back to the insurance. The insurance is a huge issue on it. You know, we mentioned the Boy Scouts. Aaron, I agree with you, the Boy Scouts. The program, it's great. It's under the Learning for Life division, usually at regional council levels. Ultimately, a lot of that will come back to is what your insurance is going to allow you to do, and that's the biggest problem. There's no consistency on that, and I agree with your concern about possibly chartering that with, or something at the state level to help coordinate that. When we deal with the Explorers, and you mentioned the West Virginia program, I know when we do the Explorer stuff in Nelsonville, they all have to be affiliated with an individual department, so it's covered under their individual insurance carrier if something happens. We have our guidelines on that. But a lot of that is even what insurance carriers will allow them to do what. You know, you look at the Boy Scouts, nothing with hydraulic power or hydraulic tools. You know, where do you let them go on call? Do you not? Do you let them ride in the apparatus? That's a whole nother issue. There's such a broad area that you guys, you're allowed to do with it, but then it comes back to, are they covered? Again, the liability comes back to you. It's a great program if you can get good working relationship with your insurance carrier. I don't know what the state would be able to do to help facilitate that.
I think them just giving us a formal program to follow, to help the insurance. So right now, we're all doing different things.
If the state had one coordinated program, that would be.
But kind of look at it, it's going both ways on the state saying what we can do, but then it's your individual insurance carrier going to allow with what the state, go with the state guidelines. I think you're going to see a lot of places push the blame on who's going to do it. Or what are we going to cover? Because what we do in Northern Ohio may not be what you guys do down in Southeast Ohio.
But it needs to be consistent. You know, we're all going to different directions. That's cool.
No, you're right. Everybody's kind of,
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to what we've done with smoke detectors. We've diluted that message so much now, you know. We've told everybody, get a 5-year, get a 10-year, photo electric, do ionization, when the real message just needs to be, it's fine. You know, kind of very something diluted. Good idea. Thanks for bringing that up, Chief. That's a good one. Yeah.
Probably a big percentage of the townships within the state are insured through autonomy. Maybe that would be an avenue to take a look at what they will allow and what they even have and might not be aware of it.
Anything else? That issue? Well, that doesn't do anything for the private car. So if we don't get some of the same group, we're just skeleton facts. That'll be uniform. All the way around. And you know, we forget about the fire department. Yeah.
I mean, the way I look at it, the state of Ohio creates the programs, and all of them wrong. When you go into litigation, that carries the water.
Well, it does, and that's what I was thinking about, that, again, you know, state of Ohio, you know, footprint, handprint, fingerprint on it. It might have a little bit different meaning than what you do, you know, it might have a little bit different.
Well, the problem has to be decide, people need to get the table where the insurance carrier. VFIs, others, so that we can, that's like this off to them. They agree to it as it gets rolled out.
And I bet they've never thought about it. They've been doing this business the same way for so long. They've not thought about it, or maybe they're actually working with have, and they've kept them away from that. Could be,
That happens to all.
yeah.
Isn't that something we could do as a task force, try to get a meeting with them? Wait now on June 1st. And talk it over.
Or there's a lot.
Well, Chief Moore had an excellent point, and we're talking about insurance and liability. It's a shame that we're volunteering. We're doing the insurance risk management for them, but yet they don't want to have our rights. And the youth that we're trying to train, they don't want to have any participation in it. All they want to do is gather in the money. That's what's sad about this, all the way around. That's why I want to be on this task force. Insurance companies, we need to be active. Because we're doing all the work and they're reaping all the benefits. It's not a problem.
Most people don't realize or know that the state of Ohio has been the lowest insurance risk in the entire nation. And, you know, I would say because of the work you're doing, you're out there, you're doing it, you're saving the property, you're saving the lives. And now all of that, at the end of the day, makes it pretty reasonable insurance. The rate is pretty low. Pretty low. Good point. Good points. Yeah, anything else on that issue? Steve, thanks again for bringing that up. That's a good one. Very good one. We've not heard that concept of that one, so that's good. Why we're here.
Chief Outbox, Winfield Fire and Rescue, started in 82, member of Region 7, past that, 22 years. My question is, most of the people up north think that river goes through Chillicothe. It's not. I think that's the high river. They don't care about us down here.
No, it's 7. Rick's right, 7.
But they don't care down here. Pretty steep, they just.
That was out from 7.
Federal money. Since 91 was completed, they started. And 3 years, federal money. The only way we're gonna stop it is we're gonna have to do it and legislate against that. Or do like the guy did from Benton County here in the schools. Without getting type of a lawsuit or something against them, so they can recognize it's there. They don't care. And then you got another issue with people when work. Yeah, I'm gonna be working half hour, get a structure part. How many times I'm reversing you? Don't let people's house burn in and rather work, heat on my paper. That needs to be addressed. They don't want to say, what kind of training you got? We use that on our insurance for a company. How many damn thing will help you? That's something that needs to be looked at, these big major companies. They're using volunteers because they did leave here for confined space. Then I come in late from work, what do you mean? How's the guy? I say, dead, I work for you. Well, they'll go do something. But you want to reimburse me for not coming here and using my training for your company? Good luck. That kind of stuff needs to be addressed. Like I said, that federal money received every year, get that. Now we step up and say something, yes.
How many folks in here applied for the AFP grant? Anybody had any problems with that program lately? You did?
Well, honestly, we didn't receive it, but then they said, you could probably hear it. John knows me, I go to the mayor's meetings, raise out all the time. I could probably talk to 5 o'clock this evening, but anyway, that was something AFP, and I don't know where the state of Ohio reaches out to them to be able to come in and administer the program. But they actually sent us a letter wanting us to set up a peer review because they're concerned that there's not enough fire departments applying for AFG. I'm sort of like, what you just answered your own question. People not applying because you never give it to them. I mean, why the hell you need to peer review it? Let's get it in here, make sure it's happening. I think that the state, while I'm standing up, I'm just going to have to talk a little bit. I'm from Great City, been mayor for 26 years on council before that. I come to the fire department in 87, do the junior program. And I tell everybody, the junior program is a wonderful program, but the insurance companies, they get on your ass for with the high government risk management. You know, they like to limit their liability, but I feel it's a great need, and if there's a way to get it into the schools, let's make that happen. The like that, I say it's sort of like a young child going to church. I know we're not supposed to mix this up, but the young child goes to church. They grow up, they go to college, they go to their own, and they play fade away from church a little bit. But later on in life, they normally come back to that church. Same with the fire service. You know, you have a junior program, they may go on out, they go to college, they go into the military or something like that. Some come back, some rejoin because they had that initial experience. I can't really say that I joined the fire service when I was 18, 20 years old, because I've probably been doing something else that already had that instilled in me to come in and do something like that. Chasing money, yeah. I would like to see an amnesty program maybe for some of the folks that may have had their part at one time and they got into that family situation where they had children and they're at ball games and they just didn't participate. I'm going to use one example. We have one, not a member now, but probably was come back, and it was Carl. They works on a boat for 21 days at a time. When he comes home, he needs to get some of his family chores done, and they try to participate in trainings. Trainings was maybe on and off time. So there's all kind of discrepancies there that I think that the state could come up with maybe an online training process to keep the training up and maybe even the 36 hours. Let's face it. You can go into the classroom, you don't know shit until you got hands on. You go to college for 4 years, you're not going to step in the factory and just automatically take over and say, I'm here, I got the grade, I'll run this place. It's all hands on. That's the way that stuff works. So I'd like to see that. Also, I'd like for the committee to take a look at the demographics for each area of the state, because sometimes what works in one area may not work in the other. And what I want to say in our area, we're low populated. Most everybody commutes out because there's no jobs, so you're commuting out. So during the day, you're really short-handed, and then they come back in the evening, but still, you're still low populated. And then you're at the mercy of what kind of clientele. If you get somebody to put an application in, what kind of clientele are they? They're just to turn the lights on the siren, or they actually are committed to do the thing. So one thing that I did want to ask, and go back in on roll, is if the fire marshal's office and Department of Public Safety actually work together now, because I remember a few years ago, one of our state reps was talking to other legislators, and they were throwing out some ideas to say, hey, let's potentially give we look at some other states around us, how they operate, what they do. So let's potentially give some of our volunteers a tax break from the state. Well, when they did that, they looked at the amount of volunteers, and out of my understanding, the fire marshal's office didn't have a clue how many volunteers that there were throughout the state, because it was all in here Department of Public Safety. And once they start adding numbers up, they're like, oh shit, we can't do this way, too much money. But when they sent the list was, they had people on there, people had been affiliated for a long time, so I think we need a better listing on that. That's maybe something that I like your idea, send it out to the fire chiefs about how many square miles you cover, what area is there, but maybe some additional stuff, what the average age of the firefighter.
Volunteer, how many you have.
Yeah, and the whole age long, because that's something important. The other thing is I'd like to see the state and the fire marshal's office on this revolving loan fund program fund that at a higher rate. I mean, you're, to my knowledge, still 300,000 for 10 years. You know, that's tough on a small volunteer fire department that's going to be paying a $30,000 a year payment back to the state. And let's look at it in 2022, how many piece of apparatus are going to get for $300,000? Not going to happen. And with that, I'd like to see them establish another revolving loan account for fire companies that can submit just for general upkeep for buildings or whatever they need, drawings, and allow that to be funded through the state and pay that back over a period of time, sort of like the USDA programs and stuff like that. There's a whole lot of a lot of things that need to be looked at. I don't know what you come up with at your other meetings, but we're I think in our section here, the demographics is a very thing to look at, is because if you're maybe a township department, but you're close to a larger city, and there's probably is people, if they don't live in the city, so they can get out and have some extra.
There's gonna be more of that.
Yeah.
A lot more of it.
So there's all kinds of different ways of funding issues, but and so maybe I would like for you guys have maybe speak on something, some of the items that's been addressed in other areas or something you're looking at, has your committee looked at other states, the way they're operating, and found some ideas that's failed with volunteer fires.
Some other states are doing some pretty creative things. Some of which we've already talked about, tax incentives and things like that. What I've not seen in other states, and they may or may not either, is educational incentives. One, and this has been floating around for a while, and 3 or 4 different legislators talked to me about it. The concept is, Jack Smith signs up to be a volunteer for your department for 4 years. Legal binding contract, just like you're going in the military. Jack will be your volunteer for the next 4 years. And in return for that, the state will give you 2 years at state college for a degree program or career and technical education, one of the C-Tech vocational centers free. All you need to do, it doesn't have to be in fire service, they can be in anything. All you need to do is volunteer for 4 years, live up to all those commitments, all everything that the department would have, and that's something else to toss it out. Is it gonna work everywhere? Is there anyone interested in it? Probably not. But there's some that probably would, and not just younger people. There might be some folks in their 30s and older that might want to do that, that want to change careers. And I'll tell you, the career and technical centers, they're being pants off the 2-year colleges right now. And they have been for some time because they're providing training and skills that will get you a job.
A good paying job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a huge, now I'm talking about jobs so high. We have a whole list. I think there's 25 different occupations in the state and nation that are slowly going away. There's not enough people going into them. That's the common trades. You know, HVAC, the carpenters, the plumbers, electricians, for crying out loud, stonemasons. Try to find a stonemason, number one, and then number two, try to find a stonemason that you can afford. I mean, and it just goes on down the line. Welding is fine. Those are things that are helpful to the fire service. But people, you know, might do something like that. So I think that's something we'll look at as a task force when we get further down the road. Some state reps talk about that. They've talked about that kind of incentive program, along with others. And understand, I think there's just not one silver bullet for this. We've had that silver bullet, we would have shot it a long time ago. I think there's multiple ways for us to fix some of this. So, it'll be a multi-pronged response. But those are some good ideas.
There were a couple comments online that I wanted to address real quick. So Nathan Peters, in regards to the AFG grant, he said it's a pain point to submit the OFERS and FERS data because they have to collect this by hand.
Okay.
And then Matt wanted to know how many departments in Southeast Ohio have a steady volume of wildfire runs in addition to structured EMS crash.
Wildfire run. Anybody have a steady number? What? Fires in the state park, what would be classified as wildland fire?
We have them personally in our fire department. We are in Orange County, fire department. We don't have actual like federal property. We're not part of Lake Vesuvius area.
You're not part of the wing.
Right, we're just outside of it. But we do have quite frequently wildland fires that we respond to, and we do report these wildland fires back to ODNR into their system as well too.
Did you hear that, Matt? Good. The reason we're asking that, Matt just said it works for the Ohio EMA. Wildland firefighter that it works with us on some other things. So we're starting to look at that wildland component a lot more now because out west, you know, everybody's familiar with all the fires there. And we have a tremendous, I mean, this is one of the most beautiful parts of the state. Probably also one of the most vulnerable parts of the state. In a lot of different ways, especially if we have. So we're starting to look at that, a little bit different other than that. Anything else? Yes.
You will possibly start the wildland program. I know, let's see, where we are in Lawrence County, Him and I on the Lawrence County Firefighters Association as well too. We have that full task force within Lawrence County. But none of us really have that technical wildland firefighting. I think, so is that something that maybe the state could assist or come in and help?
We do, we have that class about 4 times a year.
Why can't instructors from these like the western power counties, why can't we teach them basic wildfire basic when we can access one when we need to move again north? So, don't let us teach that so that it is acceptable for the 1 year after the 36-hour commitments. First time wildfire will be here.
Try to get,
Let's look at the structures, I don't have to teach it.
try to get a red card outside of Central Ohio. Try to get a red card class outside of Central Ohio.
Well, just bring the point, because I'm talking about this very kind of plan.
Red card is the technical level of wildland. So what you have to have if you want to go out west or go anywhere. It'd be equivalent to like a fire chief versus a volunteer, which is the 6 hour.
It's like it's because we get our has it's a, yeah, it's a security guard secret for something, you know?
They said it's wildland. Yeah, yeah, that's a good, that's not the locator. I mean, we work with ODR, but they are the ones responsible from the state government perspective for the wildland issue. We're a supporting agency to that, but we also help them do the training. They have facilities on our property, to help do something. So, you know, we can ferret that out a little bit and see what we can find out. But that's a good question. There was something else someone's been training. I'm gonna step back down and be quiet. One of the things that COVID did, was positive, was we have over 80 horses of fire, state fire. We've converted, chief, what's the number now, 29 or 30 of those?
26, 100% from 80 high.
26 of those 80 horses are completely online. So if you've not looked at it, look at what we've got out there. Look at it, give it a look. I think you're also going to see for the volunteer community some changes coming in terms of training funds. We've got the training grants that everybody likes, they're popular, it's just on the money. So I think you're probably going to see a change in the way volunteers get training fees. And that's all I can say about that right now. I think, but it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a good change. If you don't like it, I'd be very surprised. And then e-hybrid courses. So these are courses that are a combination of online and come to the academy, you know, once a month or a weekend or a day to do anything. Too good. Yeah.
The online class is good.
I thought we'd get ready to blow up.
The online class is good. I know the hybrids where you go, some online, some of the academy, and the other ones are instructional, but over the computer, so you don't have to go through it. What are the times? Because the majority I've seen are all through the week, through the day, which does not meet the volunteer criteria.
So everything that we go online, we're doing one delivery online during the day, Monday through Friday, day cruise, but we're doing at least one online delivery during the year, if not two, specifically evenings of the week. We also created, we were getting multiple requests for the, my office, for the, National Fire Protection Association, the prereqs to get into fire officer one is you have to be a firefighter level 2, and you have to be an instructor. Okay? So, because we're the state fire academy, we have to follow all of that. We don't get to a highlight something, sort of, we're just not going to follow that like the standard. For us, it doesn't mean standard, it's substandard. But that does create some obstacles to access and get that. So the volunteer officer, like what we did was, it's not exactly credit, we get stack certification, but we remove those prereqs. You don't have to be an instructor, you don't have to be a level 2 firefighter. It's 100% online, we can do this. And The only thing that it doesn't do, that the only thing it does not cover is collective bargaining. Which probably is not something that you guys are doing. Otherwise, it's all the same content that the other part obviously one program.
With the, talk about the training reimbursement side of things. The last reimbursement grant that came out, there were several classes offered at the academy that you could get reimbursed for. However, you couldn't go to one of these offsites. We have a small EMS agency here in our county. If we're out on a car accident and the EMS has already taken the patient away, one of my guys would be hit by a vehicle. You know, it'd be nice to have my guys trained in EMS. However, I can't send them to Wellston to get EMS and get a reimbursement. I have to send them to the academy. So this in turn creates a problem because my guys can't afford to just go up to the academy. If there was any other way that we could expand what the off-site training facilities could teach and we get reimbursement, that would be tremendous help.
Three months time, we do an EMT class, but the training reimbursement agreement is all fires focused on specific stuff. And so what you can get also part of volunteer, one fire team is that still has a division of EMS certifies, and then pretty much everything on yeah, which I understand. But it does look at the training removed, it doesn't cover EMT programs and other things.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You know, we need to be, we're the ones that get called in everything. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's an hazmat, a gas leak, or whatever. So we're supposed to be diverse in all these training categories, but yet we are limited to just fire reimbursement. And that isn't right.
Eric, you want to talk about the other stuff? Not quick, Aaron, but he's from the division of probably. So they've got great programs.
Yeah, so there are great programs available. I don't know if anyone has looked into the Division of EMS grant programs. I'm sure somebody here is taking part in those. So there are some great programs for equipment and things like that you could look into as well. Now, the only limiting factor there is that comes out of, that is not a federal program at all. That comes out of the Division of EMS budget. And the Division of EMS is funded by seatbelt fines mainly. So when the Highway Patrol writes a ticket for seatbelts, that is how we receive our funding as of right now. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in some of you, how many of you, I'm just curious, I've applied or received an EMS, Division of EMS? Okay, so just a couple of you. So I would invite you to check that out. Now, you may have seen a decrease.
I still say $10 usually 12.
Right.
Well, the requirements and the time that goes into it now, since they changed the application process.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
The time and requirements to go to it now, since they've changed the application process, isn't worth the money you get.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Yeah, and we're very aware of that. The problem that we've seen through COVID is right now, I believe the Highway Patrol is down some 200 troopers. And so unfortunately, the seatbelt fines have decreased. And just basically, if you look at that, when you tie funding to a behavior modification tool, which is ultimately, you would want to see those go down, right? So our funding is going down, and that's something that we're looking at right now. So those of you who are receiving those grants have seen a decrease because we are seeing a significant decrease in our funding as well. So yes, to the Marshal's point, we do have EMS grants available. However, those are taking a hit as well. But, and I hear what you're saying, to go through the process of doing all that, you go, okay, well, it's not really going to fund much of anything, so why should I take the time?
Yeah, the requirements of the medical director's signature and everything now.
Right.
I mean, that seems like it should be easy, but that is an absolute pain in the ass.
Right.
And like our fire departments, which are on the subject, we are just as medical first responders.
Right.
Pain in the ass to renew your drug license to carry Narcan, saline for irrigation and oxygen.
Yep.
Paying $360 some to be under attack, but I could administer it to another firefighter not being certified. but give it to somebody that's on patient, it's usually already on, I pay for a drug license and have that certification.
Yep.
And I've had a lot of guys take the EMR class, and one thing it is scaring me, because I'm more protected under the Good Samaritan law than I am following protocol for a first responder.
Yeah.
Is your drug license that you're referring to for the pharmacy board?
Yes,
So I know in some instances, who does your protocols?
Or can I,
Okay. Are you affiliated with any type of, hospital, like, is he affiliated with any type of hospital?
yeah.
Okay, because I know specific types of drug licenses, you can get on a discount if you're affiliated with another department if they do your protocols. That might be a work.
Yeah, it was things bad, I read it up, they came down, started first station, showed us to have the bag ready to how we carry it, and they tried to get us for carrying the drug in the bag with no license. Yeah.
since we're on, like, with division of EMS, that was one thing I was gonna bring up when I had the opportunity to talk. West Virginia right now is doing a thing that if you are a resident in that state, you can get free EMT or paramedic training. Is that something that Division of EMS could go to the governor and possibly ask them to waive that fee so that it would give an opportunity for more rural departments, such as this gentleman down here, our department? Because there's a lot of times, like he said, you have to be trained across the board. You know, we was at a football game last night. It took over 20 minutes for a squad to get there to us. We was luckily, most of us have been blessed enough to be able to pay out of pocket to get our EMT, to get our money. But a lot of people don't have that. Is that something maybe you all as Division of EMS could go to the governor and say, hey, is this something we could do if you already are a firefighter like that to be able to get this training? Even at a reduced cost, if not being able to do a statewide grant, if you are a resident within the state of Ohio, being able to get this. That's something that they've done. They are getting a fairly good response out of it. That's something I personally looked into to doing it because we're on the border, but because I'm not a resident, I don't qualify. Is that something you all could go to?
Yeah, I think that's something that we could definitely, add to the list of things that we're hearing. The one thing that's important to remember is the Division of EMS does not charge for those programs. That is all determined by the accredited school that you're going to. So the school that's offering the training are the ones that determine.
They're doing the in Pell Grants, like what they do, the tax match training. All of them, how they're doing a lot of them.
Right. So yes, we can advocate for that, but the Division of EMS does not charge anything for certification or for courses. Now, we oversee those courses, all of the fire charters and the accredited EMS schools. We accredit them or charter them, and through statute and rule, we regulate them. However, we do not determine, okay, this is the amount that you will charge for an EMS program. That is, but to your point, whether it's a grant through the legislature, something like that, or advocating for that, I think that's a great idea because, unfortunately, just like the cost of everything else is going up for those schools, to hire the educational staff, to have the facilities, so on and so forth, their costs are going up as well. And they're struggling with instructors. I'm sure some of you may have instructors on your department. You're struggling to get instructors or people who even want to your point, go through that training to become an instructor. So those are things that we are also looking at, but absolutely, any way that we can, because we are not only fire, I'll just say for an incident, since we're talking about this, EMS personnel, the number of certified EMS personnel are dropping as well. And EMS, organizations are struggling significantly with enough staff. So this is something, while we're specifically talking about volunteer firefighters, it is being felt on the EMS side as well, because let's face it, a lot of the EMS agencies are volunteer as well. So this is something that we're looking at there also.
I mean, being realistic, $7,000 for that whole entire year.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of people can't pay that. And a lot of times you can't receive that financial aid for that either because of it being that 1 year long course. And it just doesn't meet a lot of the financial aid standards.
Well, you're paying $7,000 and then you're probably also trying to take off work to do it and, you know, things like that. And it's pulling you away from serving at your department and so on and so forth. So yeah, it definitely is a trigger down effect.
That's a good example of something that programs well. It should be volunteer. That would be a good example for that.
And then something else along with the, that for your educational incentives. I know you mentioned, your undergraduate, but for someone, just as an example, like myself, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. So if they can sign that on, who already have a bachelor's degree, could you not take that educational money and put it toward a graduate program? It's like, for me, I already have one, so that's not going to benefit.
Sure, is that for lunch?
I'm just asking.
But there is a lot of colleges out here now, like Columbus State, University of Cincinnati. I think OU does it. If you've been through within some type of academy, somebody didn't take those credit hours already. So that incentive is already there at some point.
We have a agreement with, well, I think that's college, doors and private college, where, you have firefighter 1, firefighter 2, EMT. That's just about, half of the 2-year degree that we've set. So I know there's other colleges that do the same thing, try to do the same thing. No, that's a good example. That's a good example. Like our technical rescue program, which was very hard to put together, and you're talking about a very specialized group of people who want to do that. But, we did the same thing. We had firefighter 1, firefighter 2, EMT. I think we threw in paramedic and companion, give you credit for it. And some other things. Today, you only need to what, 4 or 5 courses. General education courses if you have that. So that's a good one. A lot of things out there like that. I don't know what could be. It all depends on how the legislation is written, and that's something Chief Smith and I will talk about regarding the paramedic funds. All of our grants, everything that we do, as any state agency, is governed by whatever the legislature calls it. So we have to pull out, the law as written and passed regarding whichever grant program it is we're looking at. And while we would like to understand and make a change in it, we can't. The only people that can change it are the same people that gave it to us and wrote it. So that's a lengthy process. But I think with an incentive, I think I could. I don't like to be rolled into something like it. That's a good one. It's really the first over the feet.
3 degrees, but I'd love to go back and go to law school.
Got some online, comments?
Nope.
Oh,
Yeah, there was a conversation online about incentives, tax incentives and retirement incentives. Could volunteers or part-time folks be included in the Ohio Police and Fire? The police and fire pension system and Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, as part-timers, we used to be in OPERS back in the early, late 80s, early 90s, and we got kicked out of there unless you had 15 years vested or something like that. The pension systems are privately run and they don't want to be part of that. So what we're looking at doing are different types. Some of the other states on the East Coast, New York, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, are some of the ones I know of. They have what's called a length of service award program, LOSAP program, and basically it's you accumulate points. You accumulate a point for every call that you make. You accumulate a certain amount of points for trainings, work details, continuing education, and if you it's wrapped out, so if you get 50 points in a year, you get a little bit, you get 75, 100, whatever, and then over 10, 15, 20 years, if it's kind of like a national park, right? It's fine, service, activity you had, that will be expensive to pay out. Some of these programs, people, $1,200 a month, retire and have just be a volunteer for as many years as many folks have been. So that's something that we take a look at and develop and covered by the pension system to say that. And then the other part of that, the question was the monitoring on is also about tax incentive. And you guys talked a little bit about where there are conversations that we're taking a look at are some kind of type of state income tax abatement, again, based on your activity level in the department. And then, what your township trustees can already do a property tax abatement that's involved in this. So that would be something that can happen locally. So those are topics to discuss.
Then from this, I said it explained three areas. Primary one of them is training, obviously. Rolling these at retention and recruitment. We've got a committee looking at taxation, finance, budgeting, and we have another subcommittee that's looking at the following operations. So that's how we're approaching this initially. We'll keep that structure, but we've broken down so that each group can really do a deep dive into some of these issues that are specific to us.
Marshal, if I could add on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, it's a federal issue, but I think this task force needs to address it is we reach out for volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers that come from the Social Security side. And if we get them into the PDRS, what they call elimination, we actually penalize the people on their Social Security when they go get that pension. That's obviously a federal issue, but it's something that I think this task force needs to advocate for change. Because the last thing we want to do is penalize the volunteers that we get into the service. And it doesn't matter how much you make in the PRS system. It's you're in, you get the witnesses. I think that's important.
That's a good point. You hate to pay for something to never get the benefit.
I got a question.
Right here. Okay. You go wait, basically.
There's some great ideas here. When I came to this thing, my name is David, and I work with the racing car department. I've been with racing and been volunteer for 46 years. We're supposed to West Virginia, give up. So, those the ideas are, I had pretty much been covered. I'm going to just touch on them lightly. Maybe or something, somebody wrong. One of the things, of course, retention and recruitment is a big thing for all of us now. And one thing that I know, the Department of West Virginia, Blue Bear, they've got a class set up in their little high school. And it's in their curriculum. And they run people with things available to juniors and seniors in their school. But they can get in the basic firefighting. I'm not sure about any of that, maybe even they can get it. But they start them. So by the time they graduate, they are certified, either as a basic firefighter or EMT. I think the idea there is to get young kids started and interested when they're young. Not wait till they run around with shotgun, chasing them and get around with all that. Or they're doing EMS, that's why it gets them kind of ingrained and started early. And they've had big success with it. Well, I'm getting it.
And those people do come out as certified for, one or two, most of them do. That's all the test. So that, you're right. It's a great thing to have if you've got it. Not everybody's got it.
Yeah, there's about 24 there, there's about 2 dozen high school programs in the state.
Yeah.
Although I'd see if some of you guys on the panel, we could wait on it, so there said something that he's a 23, so you can see it. One thing as far as retention goes, and with all, we're going to talk about taxes and stuff, tax rates, that's all great. I looked at it a little bit different whenever somebody mentioned the pension there, but I was really thinking about a supplemental pension. Help you retire. I know it can't be no large amount, can't be anything huge, but there could be some throw it out there, $200 a month after you retire from EMS or from fire. That might be an incentive for somebody maybe 30 years old to hang in there longer. I understand there have to be requirements made to make sure they don't hold their requirement. But that was something I thought might help on the retention part. And they didn't recruit. Well, let's see, recruitment, fundraising. Nobody likes to fundraise. I don't like it. It's becoming worse and worse. It's a pain. When you get older, it gets worse and worse. But nowadays, you have less and less people to help you do it. And let's face it, we can't buy anything pretty much. We really want fun. We have to chicken barbecue, we drink some beef, we like the local stuff. We can't buy that CPA longer reason. It's impossible, can't be done. Still gonna do it, some fundraising, but really doesn't help us that much in the big ticket. So again, I'm going back to West Virginia. 30 years ago, I'm gonna say, West Virginia implemented an income tax, 1% income tax on everybody's homeowners insurance in the state of West Virginia. They took all that money and put it in a pool, and they distributed that money out to every fire department in West Virginia. I'm not sure how many was there, 55 counties, fire department. Speaking of one county, Mason County, which joined us, is, they got at that time, I said, good 30 years ago, they got $25,000 a year given to them, which at that time, 25,000 was a decent amount of money. They had certain criteria they had to meet on their training or record keeping. And the state checked on every cell to make sure that they weren't cheating or sliding. But they got that money and pretty much gave it to them. Also, in that provision, once every 8 years, and that's because there were 8 fire departments in that county, they bought a new fire department. So every 8 years, your fire department will get a new fire department. Now, whether it's a pumper or a break rig or whatever, that's pretty much up to you. I didn't know if they had a limit on the amount of money they would give you towards your truck, but I'm sure there was some major help there. Why? No, we're mainly concerned nowadays about recruitment and retention. But we still got the same old devil looking over our shoulder, that's fundraising. Something like this would be probably helpful on other people, for many fire departments. One buying their turnout gear, fire hose, breathing new truck. So it's something. I assume they're still built. I've talked to West Virginia Fire Departments lately. But that was a big news for them back then. And then the last thing I'll is comes down to training. Now, Wilson guys, they did a great job. We used them for training, basic classes, and they did a super good job. Throw them on the bus or anything, they're great. But they're still a good hour and 10-minute drive. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is for us to have somehow have at least one basic fire class in our county, in every county. Once a year, and a station in our county, you can rotate that around. Because when you're trying to recruit somebody, and you say, oh, by the way, you're going to Wilson, exercise, become a volunteer firefighter, so you get up at 3 o'clock. Somehow they just don't respond to that very well. So I'm thinking about how you had something a little bit close to them. Come down on the crowd time. and make it more convenient for them, because we gotta make this easier on people to get them to join and to volunteer. If you can't make it harder, we gotta make it easier to get them, some of the kids today don't volunteer. Matter of fact, kids today, well, I don't know what today, but game. So that sums it up to 4 ideas I have. It's real good ideas here today. Mr. Green Fire Department there, he's the youngest there. He has some good ideas. So with that, and your permission, I'll turn it back over to my colleague. These guys.
All right, thank you. You want to take a break for it? Questions or comments before we move on to the task force? Yeah.
One thing that Career Center does up where I live, we're like an outreach program. So we're maybe 40 minutes away. And our department hosts a 36 or a firefighter 1, the transition, or firefighter 2 transition through that career center using their instructors, but it's at our department. So the local, but on the flip side, I've got people coming from 2 counties away, which is closer in some cases, but that might be something you might want to approach your career center.
So just when you think you got somebody hooked, join, and you tell them that, I'll think about it.
Yep.
A lot of times that kills the deal.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break. Let's do some online questions and then we'll come back. Okay, all right. Everybody stand by.
All right, how you been?
I remember when I was down there, some prices.
I feel up to that. It makes it pretty different.
I know. You say, I'm right now.
Hold on, that's been glad. He's still around. Yeah. He walked by what's fun?
Right, you want to lead us off?
So nobody left a comment that they actually wanted to speak.
Oh,
So.
okay. All right, well, just listen in, folks. All right, so we're back. We're done with the online already. Where did we leave off? Somewhere over here. Okay, all right. Let's go.
My issue is, we need to have a more streamlined process to bring a firefighter out of state into our system. I had a firefighter with firefighter 2 car in New Jersey, hazmat tech, all kinds of certifications. And when he submitted his paperwork, he got a 36-hour car. And I mean, it's recognized his training, as his abilities. He still will be able to perform his function out of state. With the 2 certification, hazmat tech, roof rescue, and everything he has, only giving a 36-hour car is an insult. So, I mean, there needs to be some easier process. Somebody in, when he's already training, ready to respond. Yes,
Did that person stay with you even though that's all they ended up with? Anybody else have a problem with reciprocity?
We see a lot of issues with the academies, people trying to get reciprocity, they end up having to take volunteer when they're going from West Virginia, for instance, with a fire. The most are going to get some volunteer when they come in because EMS is looking at differences in the hours and some of the intricacies of the course. Instead of looking that they met a fire one, instead of looking that they met the fire one certification standards that West Virginia's put in place, they're not doing guard for car. So they're comparing it to the hours, so specific components, even though West Virginia meets the 1,001 standard, it's just not laid out the same as Ohio standard, so they're not getting reciprocity for those cars. And so we're seeing a lot of people that are having to come through the class because they're not getting the certification to the level that they were certified in the state that they're coming from.
Anybody walking away?
Not that we've seen from our side, but we're only seeing when they're trying to get into the service, whether or not they're sticking around after we're just kind of fed up with it. We've been trying to help a gentleman out of New York lately, and he's been getting his certifications, but the process is just kind of really in that. Because not only can they just submit their card or their certifications, they actually have to send a portion of the application to New York. The New York has to go and fill like it, and then submit back. And it's fairly in-depth, the question that they're asking and requirements. So instead of just saying, you know, you met the 1,001 standard the way New York laid it out. So we're gonna give you a 1,001 standard certification here. They're not doing that. They're comparing apples to apples. Down to from state to state.
And it's slowly gotten better, if West Virginia stuff usually for program. But West Virginia doesn't do it continuously to get fire certifications different places. So we get guys, they've been on the fire department for 20 years in West Virginia, and they come over and have taken a whole class. Some of it's through WVU, some is through the so this is that even like good thing that usually the state level has out, they can provide the training that they've had. But for me, I like old school. If I go past the test, I take a class, but I take a class. So I mean, I think somebody has been in service for years, and if we got right, we don't. Oh, we have career fire department. Right across the river from us. A lot of people go there and get out volunteer, but up in a career, with West Virginia, they just finished their union, letting them volunteer. But so now they have the West Virginia Academy, and a lot of them still get the 36 for Ohio, but they don't get their level 2, and some of them get instructors in West Virginia, but that's the challenge, everything to get to Ohio.
A lot of the reciprocities are requiring written test, physical practical exams, and live burns before they can get their reciprocity in Ohio. That can be a major time thing because trying to get into a live burn or find something that's doing prior to a practical is difficult. Oh, and the cost protection, absolutely.
While you're there, it's not open.
One big thing we've had an issue in our county is, rollover. We have very few chiefs left in our county in the last 5 years. A lot of our departments has changed, chiefs and all of them. And one problem we ran into is the way everything in the state is all spread out. We've got state, the state attorney general, fire marshal, the state, and I'm the line. I've been on for 14 years, and so it's, I've been shooting now for 4, and I had to get things started, because they let a drug license go, or that content status dropped the once, and literally there's nothing that has guidance on what exactly you have to be up to date with across the board. But some of the stuff that I found out I had to be registered with, I was getting official at a state level through unlawful, and then you're trying to find passwords, getting access, and it's a pain.
Trying to figure out where to go.
Yeah. So, and it seems like COVID was really bad because it's all up there and then it start transferring in these messages, certain beats to the time. But, I will say with all the officers, they're really helpful, all that stuff. But another thing down in our area, there's I know you're also working just like we are, and like the prevention inspection, taking them to school and trying to help them stay on that level. We're getting to the point that we have a county building department that comes from us also. We're getting business and stuff that's just popping up, and we're the bad guys, we're out enforcing it. And they end up, they dragged out for months, and there's no back, and EPA come in and investigate a fire, and we like being the bad guy, put the fire out and give them all paperwork, and then they come out and slap them on the wrist. These are the guys that fund our department. I mean, like our schools, they decorated for homecoming, prom, and Saturday, and things up for months. For stealing, you know, we were the bad guys, we had to go out and take it off, and we don't like that certain relationship because for us, we don't understand the new, it's actually developed a chain that makes us the bad guys in the fight. So, I know there was a few things I've talked to inspection here and stuff from the Rendsburg and field court. I've heard that they can do that legally, they're dealing with the county level. I think it's just the state needs to work with county level, but I mean, even in our instance, our sheriff's department, we've got a few arson cases that have been handcuffed on video, admitted to the sheriff's department, released them and say, well, I'll let the state farmers, because they do not have the training of all of them, know what the charge is. But it's in our area, it takes a while to get resources down.
So we've got 3 investigators in there, it still takes time to get it.
Now, from my understanding, that you all listen to people who you all been often work with, but, that's just like, they go to the office of our county, we gotta wait for the problem, in the Lawrence County, they leave us taking on the process of fire. Everybody's pushing the reasonable.
I know it's not going to be consolation, but I can tell you, we have the same issue with all the games. Our sense of fireworks and all their state connected. And each county prosecutor has their own view on what they want to do, what they don't want to do. And a lot of them, what they don't want to do is what we need to do. You know, so we try to use those points as education, to try to get them that's important to follow. And it's an uphill battle for us, just like an issue. But you remind me to make sure that tell everybody here, when it comes to retirement, when it comes to some of those other issues, if you ever have a question, call us. Because we've got field investigators, field inspectors all over the state. We got 27 statewide. They do a lot of different things. And they're out in the regions of Ohio where you need them. I don't need them in Rutherford, I need them out here. But we also have the chief of the code enforcement bureau, the code chief. They are always available. If you're not using it much, if you're not writing citations very often, it could be difficult. And that's the other thing. If you haven't written citations for someone through the fire code in a while, and you're getting ready to, and you're not sure, call us. Call us first before you do the citation so that we can help. We won't do the citation for you, but we're the jurisdiction having authority. So, we'll help you. Because once that citation is written, whatever you've written is what every judge and every attorney is going to be looking at. And there's nothing we can do. If there's a mistake in it, the way you wrote it, there's nothing we can help. Other than the support you have, however else we can. But once you write it, it's written. So please give us a call. Every once in a while, we'll get involved in a local jurisdiction issue where a citation has been issued improperly, and it's just been maybe 1 or 2 words or missing comma. I mean, in citation, all of that stuff happens, and it's hard to recover. We had a case up in Lake County, other end of the state again, involving agro-tourism. I was messed up and called agro-terrorism, but agro-tourism. And these are agricultural lands, farms, owned by private individuals, that for whatever reason don't decide to put a party park or turn your existing barn into a party facility. Well, when you do that, you are exempt from building requirements. But you are not exempt from fire departments if you have large enough facilities to trigger the Clinton public assembly designation. So if you got a facility like that, you're not exempt from the fire. What happened months and months ago, fire chief, volunteer fire chief was driving through the jurisdiction, was familiar with the land, and all of a sudden saw this new structure on this agricultural farm. Stopped, got information about it, and the gentleman was a vineyard. He built a beautiful building, with no permits from anybody. He just built the building. It's his property. He built the building. Didn't get zoning, nothing, and it is township land, so that wasn't required, it's extended on its own. So the fire chief noticed that there was no landscaping equipment in there at all. Nothing. So he started the process of the citation for that facility. And this gentleman that owned the property went out and hired 2 attorneys, 2 lobbyists, and a visitor to help fight this. And the issue is the sprinkler system, large enough facility. And he spent more money avoiding the sprinkler system than what the sprinkler system was. But my point is, this one marketing volunteer fire chief did his job, also didn't look right, and we've supported that. We've supported on that, which hasn't been difficult, but they're following the requirements of the fire. When you're doing that, it's hard for us to say no, we're against it. So we've supported it, but we've had a lot of inquiries from a lot of people about that. Plus, it's an audit in fire, auditing the building. Yeah, we have the same issue. We'll have to keep fighting the same battles together. And it goes into space.
One other thing is with the whole, I know you're all bringing us together, 1 year to be certified to join the fire. Touched on that a few times. Like they said, I've had guys that retired and left the home fire department years ago. They're older now. They just want to show up and drive fire trucks. I mean, we've got some truck drivers and stuff that don't have any issue to fight fire, but they drive in a truck and pump them for fire activity. So the wording in that, we can change that. I mean, maybe have engineers come up with things like that. Having to be like PFOC and pump class. But because I know like our insurance, it's 16 and drive fire escapes. That's one thing. We tried to put it up. We got people that just want to know the call. That's going off duty. I mean, it's a job for everybody, but we make it difficult to do that. I mean, also, another issue that I've had with people that can't be on the fire department because of past history that's changed. I've been fighting to get some people certified because the way the wording drove on there, they had a criminal background in the past. They can't, I don't know if that's something we should address. It should be some program that way. California trainings, all their,
Are there some changes coming down on that? Aaron, because I heard they were looking at making some changes to the.
Well, they've already made quite a bit of changes, just on past, depending on the level of conviction, misdemeanor versus felony, so on and so forth. Now, it's gotten a lot easier for those with criminal backgrounds to obtain a certification. Really, the only thing that restricts, I guess, would be a felony within, I believe it's the past 10 years, off the top of my head. So it is a lot easier now.
So you can get started now with the felony, just the time period.
Well, it depends on,
What the felony is.
it depends on, yeah, when, the type of conviction, so on and so forth. We do have a review process, and so anybody with any sort of conviction background can get a hold of our office and we can take a look at it. And it will go to our case review team and our investigations team that will look at that. So that way you don't have somebody going all the way through training, going to apply, and then all of a sudden realizing Oh, wait, I don't qualify.
How to get a peer review for little ones.
Yes,
That's what we used to have to tell people. I don't know, we might get certification, we might not.
yeah, absolutely.
And with that, I mean, like, we got one guy, we got a impersonation charge, they finally got him impersonating the game, but he still has lights in the vehicle, carries a bag, and they said there's nothing they can do unless they catch him in the act of actually performing the duty.
Right. Right.
He runs around and tells everybody he's on a car phone. Can't do nothing about it.
Yeah. And I will just say real quick, Marshall, just since you bring this up, it is very, very important that any personnel that receives a conviction, they have to report that to the Division of EMS. So it's very, very important that they do that up front. Because if not, then depending on the individual situation, they may in fact lose their certification. So it's very, very important that contact our office, any level, because there's so many factors, you know, misdemeanor versus felony, level of misdemeanor, type of conviction, so on and so forth. So it's very, very important. A lot of people don't realize that because they think, well, if I receive a conviction, it's all the state of Ohio. There should be some sort of reporting structure that you automatically know about that. And we do not. Law enforcement is not required to report anything to the Division of EMS regarding convictions. So lots of times we find out about these things through the news, anonymous reports, so on and so forth. So.
Does it have to be a person or be like the department or staying the business?
Well, it's technically needs to be the person that reports it to us, that person that received the conviction. Of course, if you as the fire chief, for instance, know about a person that's had a conviction, it's really important that you report that. But to kind of fulfill that mandatory reporting requirement, it has to be that person.
Aaron, does EMS have the criminal conviction determination request form? So, for example, for commerce and for the board of pharmacy, it's not a form. I think it's like a $20 fee and before you were to apply.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you can just let us know and we'll take a look at that. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what it costs. And we do that on a fairly regular basis. So.
Questions or comments. I'm a master and I'm a lieutenant at Chesapeake Fire Department in Orange County, Ohio. I also am the administrator. I'm the secretary treasurer, and I do the grant applications and stuff for the fire department. I'm also one of the officers for our association, our county association as well too. So one thing is the cost of homes. In our Lawrence County area, it's a very rural area. A lot of times, VHF, UHF doesn't get out. So a lot of the departments need to rely on the MARC system. However, a lot of our departments cannot afford the MARC payments. One department in our county, their operating budget annually is $5,000. There is no way they can afford the MARCs. They just can't. A lot of our departments within our county's operating budget is $10,000 or less. Most of them don't have an operating budget department at all. So within this cost, I do understand that there is a MARCs grant that can be applied for. Year before last, there was multiple departments in our county that applied for it. 0 departments was awarded this grant. This past year, there was also multiple departments within our county that applied for the MARCs grant, and 2 departments received it. So that is something that we look at and we see, oh, this is going, like this gentleman here said, this is going Columbus, Cleveland, and Miami area. The Lawrence County area is being left out. The Jordan Township goes the same way with Scioto being left out of things as well too. I know, once again, going back with the state of West Virginia, their system that is similar to what our MARC system is the siren system. they did a thing to where the state pays for that system. Is that something that could possibly be looked into to try to help these rural departments that cannot afford this, Marshal insulin?
Let's talk about the grant program. The Marshal grant program that we operate, and please understand, we're just a good grant people when it comes to Marshal. We don't write the policies for Marshal, we don't set the fee schedule, we don't collect the fees for Marshal. That all goes to the program office for the Marshal system and the Department of Administration. So we don't operate. Full-time departments aren't eligible. So the 3C, they never applied to, we would reject their application. The Marshal grant program is exclusively for small and volunteer fire departments. So our grant program has consistently been $3.5 million. Is what we put in the grant program. And we received, what do we have? You need some information on grants.
And they said, you should be getting a series of postcards reminding you of deadlines for these various grants as they come up. And we'll send you emails and postcards to remind you that these are.
Understand, we pay you nothing to bring up the Mark City. But $3.5 million, so that goes out through the entire state for small and volunteer firms, full-time departments. Now, what we have available, $3.5 million, we technically received over $9 million in requests. So on average, on a good year, we're only for 5%. So this is a misnomer that once we get grant money from the state, we get it forever. No, every year you're competing against however many other departments apply. You know, on years that we've had more funding for, let's say, it's possible that we had fewer people apply. It's just simple mathematics. More people apply, there's less money to go around everywhere. So, we are going to try in the next budget to throw some more funding towards. But $3.5 million, $4 million, maybe $4.5 million. That's just scratching the surface, folks. Just scratching the surface. If we funded all $9 million, $9.2 million in present, that's still scratching the surface because the fees are not. And I'm sympathetic to the fees because we pay them. We have 47 Marks capable of walkie-talkies in the Marshal's office for all of our field personnel. And we don't get a subsidy. You get a subsidy to offset your fee. We're paying $40 per radio per month. So I get it. There's been a lot of attention, a lot of questions from legislators this year about Marks in the operation of the Marks system. I would say if you have some concerns about that, tell your legislators, tell them, but we're doing what we can. And we fund, when we add up everything we do to support the Marks program, it's a little over $7.5 million a year for aside from the grant. So we're taking a lot of funds from Marks, but we're hearing the same issue that we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything about it. We're just a good green people. We're probably going to refocus on the next cycle, like Andy was talking about, service fees. Service fees will always be a part of that package. The question is how much we have available funding for service, and how much we're doing quickly. It's a balancing act. It's never perfect. It's just never perfect when you're competing with each other. So it's difficult. It's difficult. We understand it, but it's trying to get the right amount of funding to manage it. Well, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the fee, I've not heard anybody say they love the fees. They're comfortable with the fees.
Well, that's fairly big, because I heard that the fee to pay in the power sites and the initial bill are really large, and they got it paid off.
I tell you, that's a good question with a program also. I don't even know the rest. Yeah, that's never excellent. I mean, I remember years and years ago, and those of you that've been around a while, March first came to us, with the concept, we were told, the more you use it, the cheaper it's gonna get. Well, that's not happening, it's going the other way. So, you know, I don't know the allocate for all of the funds that the program wants. Like I said, that's a good question for the March program. We really are just great people, we're trying to stay out of other people.
I think one of the things that might be nice to see, both from the committee and potentially from the Marshall's office, with all of that funding being pushed towards Marks, because I can't put into my own radio system. We don't use Marks. I can't put in for funds to buy radios or do anything with mine. I can only go to Marks. I think we just kind of like to see that advocacy going towards Marks and saying, hey, we're putting $3.5, $4 million into your system every year for our volunteers, and they can't even use it.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question right now, I hear a lot of folks, all over the state, a lot of people just questioning spending funds. They're questioning, you know, why the bullet making the big expense and saying, done, we're gonna go back to what we had. And
We switched for a month, years ago, 5, 6 years ago, and we couldn't talk. And we started looking at it again, and we had a meeting with Marks, and we said, it doesn't work in our county. We've got all kinds of dead spots. And the gentleman that was there, pretty defensive about it, that the system works much better than it does. So we had a big special meeting, and they went out throughout the county, and when they found out there's a bunch of dead spots where the system.
which is fine, yeah.
And, but you know, there's still a push from so many directions to switch to Mars with the interoperability. Interoperability is great when you can actually get power.
Yeah, well, and you said all the way to county. Stay in one part of the county, see the other side of the county, straight through, you know, much different, much different. I'm sympathetic, I understand from, you know, our team at the Marshal, talking about Marshal. It's just, there's a whole other branch of state government. In that discussion, and I would encourage you to do that. I'll also work with the association, Fire Chiefs Association, Volunteers Association, they have representatives of committees, and I think you can let people know, but I've talked about the message long enough and nobody's listening, so. Those are good points. We get it, I guess that's all I was talking about, we understand, we get it.
My last comment or question would be, as far as being able to help volunteer fire departments with representation. So like our department, just for instance, we are 3 entities under one group. So we deal with our township and we deal with the village, and both of those we would have a contract for. So the township and the village's lawyers are able to look at this contract and say, this is what you need to do. However, the fire department doesn't have that luxury of having necessarily a lawyer or someone that would represent their needs on our behalf. Going through, so with these contracts, you look at, does anybody know the gaps in our generalized area is, no, we can't, we're not going to look at that. Is there a bureau or anything within the state or like the state fire association or like that would have anybody that would be able to, under, like, say, those circumstances, just look at it and say, you know, that's kind of iffy, or that don't look right, or someone to kind of act on behalf of the volunteer fire department.
Legal aid.
Yeah, I mean, here's our relationship with Austin. Ohio's a home rule state. And so issues like what you're describing, they're all local jurisdiction. They are. I'm not sure you would want us to come in and give you a solution. And I get calls, you know, someone from either chief or volunteer somewhere that, hey, you need to tell the township trustees to put the names on the back of our goats. Or something, you know. We're not going to come out and tell fire chiefs. That's not our. I think there are resources though that the fire chief should. Yeah, there's a lot that really nobody has to see.
And they can do that much easier than we can because they're not a branch of the government.
Are any of you member of the Cal Fire Chiefs Association? You might.
You might want to look at it.
And are you friends?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. Because if you weren't, say, township or village, that prosecutors.
Well, when actually first being placed, just as an example, our fire department caught fire. And nobody's working to get out of the fire. The village. And then, so like with that, there's nobody that wants to represent in our jurisdiction or in our area for the fire department. They look at it as.
So what are they doing?
The village owns the building and insured it.
Yes. And they're just kind of, yeah, we'll fix it, we'll fix it.
Well, it's a good point, because, I mean, this is a nice, probably hundreds of miles away from here up in Belmont. I mean, they had an apparatus, go through part of their floor in their station a couple of weeks ago. And her tire went through the floor. They were able to get it and drive and get it up quickly before the rest of the truck went through. But this is a volunteer fire. And they've got no funding to fix that hole, and it's more than fixing the hole, it's fixing the structure. So, we have no funds available, nothing in the Ohio Fire Code gives us the authority or jurisdiction to even have it. Like, but here's again about a year ago, Blanchard Township, which is up in Northwest. They had a grass firefighter that was having a battery problem, they left us on free charge. And came back, and folks left the station, the volunteer department left the station, came back 3 hours later, there's smoke pouring out of the beams of their station. Worked up some apparatus in part of the building, same situation. There's no fund to help them repair that building. Now, in their case, it was insured, and it was a township owned building, so it got fixed pretty quickly, it got completed pretty quickly. But they had the resources. Belmont County, they didn't have the resources. One of the fourth counties in the state, and the rest of some of our other counties, it's not there. And it sounds like that's a similar situation. Look at it. That's something I think we need to look at when we look at recommendations in some way to be able to address emergency, unforeseen emergency. Where we can provide something. Other than, directing people to grants. There are some federal grants that do more than what we can offer if you fit into the mold. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has a rule to develop system grant. And Jack, why don't you talk about that? He's our regional expert on that.
The U.S. Department of Ag, they've got a grant program with, I have to find the link for you. It is also population based, and it will go up to 50%. And it's earmarked, FEMA got out of, with the AFG grant, they got out of the bricks and mortar business. You cannot get into, they don't fund fire stations anymore. But USDA does up to 50% based on the population. So finding the other 50% is a challenge. We've seen, and because of the match, that's the problem. They got more money than what's new with the building post office.
They can't get what?
They have structure. If you just Google USDA, it's rural development.
Now, you have to fit their mold. But if you fit their mold, I've worked with this group here, seems like help them a lot.
They do it when it's fun, but then also, I think.
I think that's a lot of money.
That's what we did our.
Yes. That's that. Lincoln County, superintendent fire station. Here again, non-traditional, I never would have thought, Chief Smith told me about it a couple of years ago.
You know, that's, I mean, we wouldn't think to go there. We just wouldn't. And, you know, so, let me say something. We're trying to do what we can to grant our training programs are one of the most popular things that we do. But, you know, you won't, it's just scratching the surface, just scratching the surface. All right, so where we at?
Here. Larry Johnson, Huntington Township from Ross County. Let's start with the Marks program. I know, yeah, I know everybody complains about lack of Marks towers. I know in the past that you would not fund repeater systems. Who's here do we been about repeater systems? The only thing that's going to help make this system any better. I'm under the impression that every state trooper in the back of his cruiser, he has a repeater system. You'd never hear a state trooper complain about the Marks radio system. So who's here do we then possibly get these? I'm thinking, what, 5,000 or 6,000, to get these things.
The short answer is DAS, because, our training program is very strict. We fund radios, we fund services. We can't fund anything else. The way the legislation is written, we are restricted to that. We can't add repeat. The legislation is never written to include repeat.
So we need to bend earlier to get the repeater system as a allowable Marks expense.
Or the program on March, the March people that are taking your fees, that's them to fund them. So.
Okay.
Make sure you get your usage of your fees.
Okay.
But that's a good start. We're not able to do that.
Okay.
For fees and equipment, you know, with my batteries, but it's all connected just to fees for the equipment. So.
Okay.
That's not what state trooper you talk to about the data center stuff.
Does it? Well, yeah, I mean, I can say in Columbus, we had a problem downtown. So the natural inclination was, we're gonna put repeaters in all the feed cars. It didn't make any difference. We ended up in one system, our 800 system, what's called hard car. It's short, and that's the only one for us, the downtown environment. Even campus, everybody's on the computer to make a difference there. They did. Now, that's a urban environment, so I can't speak other than that, but they didn't make much difference. But undoubtedly, probably some circumstances.
Every state trooper car has a computer system in it. That's what computer has. However, if I show up on my scene in my cruiser, the chief boss isn't seeing his cruiser, once my car door opens, it automatically refers to my computer.
Exactly.
So if I work for the Gallipolis post and I'm a sergeant at Jackson post, Gallipolis is handling crash on 35 out from Chief Alcox's place. He's there working on their channel. I pull up to the Jackson post, I open my door up, all the radios now are hooked to my repeater. And that's the issue with the repeater system.
I know it's a confusing system for the people who have repeaters. I've heard that before. It's very confusing when.
I've done it for the last 18 years.
I'm gonna guess you get the long hump every once in a while.
You do.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that Marks is not gonna build new towers. Because you ask them and the first thing out of their mouth is, do you realize how many millions of dollars? Do you realize how many billions of dollars you're collecting from user fees? So this seems to be the only hope is put repeaters on your vehicles, and it's just gonna take a lot of training to say when multiple vehicles show up.
Yeah.
So it's right, you're gonna switch them off, so it is what it is, but that's probably a short answer. Let's go back to this 36 hours volunteer fire class. I say, we're from Ross County, a lot of people get training through the Pickaway Ross CTC.
Good place.
When I was the fire chief in Huntington Township, I would get liability waivers from 36-hour people saying, in order to test, chief,
you need to sign this liability waiver, taking the responsibility. I told the trustees at the time, I'm not doing it. I am not putting my tail on the line for a bunch of guys to get a 36-hour car. I commend you for pumping the money into this level 1 class. You'd love to see people go up on a structure fire and get off and can go to work. They can go in and do the job. 36-hour people are great. Me personally, they scare me to death, but I'm not gonna take that. Where's that liability? Is that coming from the state or the school?
They did away with that waiver as part of the package.
We still do that.
It's not part of the package.
We still use that waiver.
Yeah,
That's you acknowledge.
Comes from the feast of PMS.
That you acknowledge that, we're not 1,001.
But you basically have to put that out in the voluntary package.
Or on the volunteer package.
Yeah, the packet will take that, it's not in there. That sheet's.
It's in ours.
They may not have removed it, but if you go pull up the volunteer fire packet on the Division of EMS website, that is not one of the pages of the packet. Or sign-offs.
We don't have it in there, but it is still, I think what you're saying, it's up to the local authority having jurisdiction. So if you choose, to your point, you know, if you choose to take on that liability and say, yeah, we're gonna, you know, have our 36-hour firefighters make entry, yeah, that reverts back.
I want to comment back. How long you been in Marshall?
Probably 7 years ago, if not longer, at least that long, 6 or 7.
I county, the sheriff,
Probably close to 10, okay.
the sheriff department, the water run everything, once the marks, maybe. Well, and we only had, at the time, I'm gonna call it 1.5 times, almost the building line. The right to the tower, and that helped the sheriff department, but contact, first one, meet with the head of VAs. And take note of the boss also, I can't remember.
Rick Small, that's CHMA.
That's what we did with Gerald Anderson.
It's Daryl. Daryl's the one that said the more you use it, the cheaper it'll get.
I know Gerald. To get the other part, it took some meetings, many meetings, contacting their local state reps. And, you know, I guess it probably took 6, 7 years, but it's up and it's quite low. Get a hold of somebody. People that might do it.
I know we had some trouble one time because we operate off of a tower and decided to trail state forest. And they actually missed the call at the fire station in the middle of the night. And Mark said, well, all the channels were tied up. And it was probably within a year or less after that, they had, they threw some kind of a chemical in out at the RCI prison. And after that happened, and they had so much trouble at the prison, they added more Mark's channels to the tower that the prison operates off of. So it kind of, in my personal opinion at that time, that, well, we see who's got the pull, the state of Ohio prison system, complain, and Mark's been over for them, get the fire department misses the call, and it's like, there's too many people on your channel. We didn't put all these people on the channel, you did. So.
Yeah, you know, we're still paged off on DHA. And many are migrating over to the Mark style pagers. So as more and more departments get those, we may have issues.
Right, that's what's happened in Ross County. They've all migrated over to Mark's pager too, so it's, we're stuck with it.
Don't get me wrong, I think Marks is a good concept, even Marks. I believe there's just some structural issues that could be worked out and tailored to better. One of the one of the things that I go back just before I return to Columbus, seemed like eons ago. The hockey field lot was up there. And there had been there several hours, and it was a defensive operation to begin with. We, were asked, Columbus was asked to send down one of our platforms from. So we did that, and we were march capable, and on the way down, the officer on the ladder was able to talk to, the incident commander through the march group and got some very valuable information, and that was about hydrant fittings. Columbus uses pretty much standard hydrant fittings than you would in an urban environment. But out here, they're a little bit different sometimes. So they were told, hey, before you get here, go here to this station and pick up the adapters that are in this port, all that good stuff. Had they not been able to do that, it would have got with that fire station, been absolutely useless. Useless. Because our platforms don't have anything, so we got to bring water to them. So that was one use. I mean, we've had several other uses in the state where farms have been very helpful with something coming in. So I like the concept. I support it 110%. I just think there's structural issues we need to figure out somehow. They're a little bit better for you. More user friendly.
Yes, that's me. TJ, Chief County Conjunctive Fire Department Prosecutor. Just had a idea that I'd like to propose on training. So, in Ohio, we've got the volunteer fire certification, level 1, level 2. I know from a volunteer fire aspect, it's often hard to get the guys to go from 36-hour to level 1 fire 2. Again, these free training programs that are put on through the Fire Marshal Office, the grant program has helped tremendously, but oftentimes, I know from my volunteer department as well, it's hard to get those guys to take that time away from them. So one of the ideas that I've had kicked around in the past and talked about with colleagues is that we have to do continuing education every certification cycle to renew our program. That's the same across all levels, volunteer, level 1, level 2. I feel like that if we were able to implement a system to where we could use that training in specific training subjects toward obtaining your next level of fire certification. So say in 2 certification cycles, that would be 6 years. If we could apply certain subject areas, like we do, much like we do in EMS, to allow that person to complete objectives that would meet the requirements of a firefighter 1 transition, say from a 36-hour fire card. As long as it's overseen by a program instructor, something along those lines, to allow that person to, at the end of those 6 years, for instance, to challenge the requirements for the checkoffs for a level 1, and then challenge the state test. I feel like that if we were able to do something like that, that could be overseen and more wisely use those training hours, so that way people are not actually sitting in a classroom environment having to give up their valuable time, that we could push those people more toward that higher certification level.
We might be able to do better than that in a shorter period of time. Ben, you want to share some of the things that we found so far? I think you'll like this.
Yeah, I've been, playing with a couple of ideas, so, long story long, years ago, Charlie here in the Society of Fire Service Instructors, was working with the Division of EMS and Public Safety to restructure the firefighter 1 transition course into more of a modularized, type of structure like you're talking about. When I came to the Division of EMS back in 2016, I was there for about a year and a half. We were to further chop that up because of some of our volunteer background too. Tuesday night training, 1 Saturday a month, you could accomplish the firefighter transition. The sticking point to that is the training subcommittee won't move off of this stance that there has to be a comprehensive written exam at the end of that. So whether you're talking about spread that over 12 months or several years, nobody's going to be able to successfully pass the comprehensive written exam. That's one of the things that my opinion comes out of the staff section. We can rethink how we do that. Kind of, that's been my pathway through this over the past 4 or 5 years. As I have been networking with my colleagues who are the state fire academy chief from across the country. You guys ever get a chance to go to, whether it's Chiefs or Instant Alabama, National Fire Academy, FDIC, it seems to be like you're ever go to these conferences or classes where that you accomplish as much sitting around the dinner table or the bar, networking and talking to people as you do after the conference. And this was the case. I was out in Fort Lauderdale last year, and we're sitting at the restaurant after our seminar, and talking with my colleague who's the state fire academy chief of Montana, and the other guy is the state fire academy chief in Kansas, and they are actually doing a firefighter one class in 40 hours, and it scares me to death. So I found out that this exact code were present. And what they do is they don't do any lectures whatsoever. To certain couple of guys' points, all that is online, it's self-paced, it's self-guided. The written exam is 55 essay questions. You get 12 months to do it, and you're done. Come here for a week. You can do all the practical skills that you firefighter one certification. In Montana, very rural agriculture, just like big part of Ohio, everybody's farming, raising all year long, so most of that gets done in February, it's 2 degrees outside. And it's fairly hardy, leaving souls, and we're all Vikings up there anyway, so it's money. That's how they do it. And they have actually done the research from an education standpoint. They have taken control rooms, they got PowerPoint to death in class, and then crammed for a multiple choice written exam. And they saw what their test scores were, they retested the 50 months, they retested the 12 months, and then they compared that to this model that they're doing now. And that these students are actually retaining that information better at 6 months to 12 months. Actually having read a chapter or a passage, synthesize it, boil it down, and write it into that practical aspect, and writing those answers that helps people remember it better. And you take, this is my big mistake, when I grew up, and mechanical aptitude much higher on my level of ability than academic aptitude. I hate taking tests. There's a lot. Sit somebody down who doesn't live in front of a computer all day and make them take a computer-based test. The stress levels through the roof, right? And so if we can test it on practical experience wise, and if there's something you can't do, not just having to do an essay test. It seems to be person putting that they're doing that for a long time. So I'm really intrigued about that. We actually had a guy go out to Montana this week. He was going to try to do something back. Well, he went out to do vacation for 2 weeks. He was going to look up the guys in Montana State Fire Academy and watch them do a class. His whole family got COVID, so they're out there strange and getting back. So we're going to have to try to bring those guys here to Ohio, or a bunch of us who go out there to see exactly how we do it. The way it's explained to me is it's a lot like running football plays, right? Like working out, we go out and we just did a t-shirt and shorts, walking the plays, and you throw on some pads, and then gently kind of do some taps and work up to where you're scrimmaging in the full game. And that's how they do it. He said by the time they, in that 40 hours, they probably put their turn on 1,500 times because they just walked through all the JPRs associated with firefighter one. And it's like riding a bike, right? Practice. And that's how you probably are doing 2 minutes. Yeah. So we're very intrigued with that. What could we do? Some of your other ones about doing But there's enough stuff out there, all the JPRs were covered in videos, you know, the publishers, J and B and If stuff, they've got all of these little, really cool snippets of videos that cover all the JPRs. They can all be self-paced. So we're taking a real hard, at least put a volunteer certifications, what you need help on. Because we all know, you're feeding people, you're drinking from the fire, it's trying to absorb so much information in such a short time. So we can do better, just think outside the bounds.
I think from an educator standpoint too, we need to move away from this, in-person learning environment. I don't know where that lies, you know, I know there's been a EMS and certain standards, especially in initial certification as far as EMS goes, and what has to be in-person learning. But I feel like we're doing ourselves a disservice by being complacent as to where we are and not adopting new technologies as far as that virtual learning. You know, we saw that explosion during COVID, where everything moved virtual. And I can attest to that, you know, I went out and got my instructor certification during COVID, and that was great, just to be able to open up my laptop from 6 to 10. While I was at work, I clocked out 4 hours, attended the classroom training, shut my laptop and went back to work. That was an amazing environment to learn in. It would allow me to digest the information. I wasn't worried about, oh, I have to learn, I have to leave, I have to drive an hour to get to class. So I think that's where we need to lie to, is the culture change and getting, you know, the availability, especially initial certification. I need to realize that, you know, death by PowerPoint is not the way to get. You know, one of the instructors I had several years ago told me this adage, the mind can absorb no more than the asking third. So, you know, whenever I'm sitting behind my desk, I can play this virtual lecture, get up, move around, and not be disrupted. So I think that's the thing that we need to look at too, is a culture change and moving to a more virtual environment.
Well, I think if there was a silver lining in the COVID cloud, it forced us to do that. We had to do it online, and what we did at the state academy, we kept our data, and we showed the things that we were doing online. We had some aspects from the state exam. You know, and EMS has got that data too. So I think now we can go to the training subcommittee and show them that, hey, in following best practices, you can actually do this and do it well.
And it's a culture change. Absolutely. You're correct. It's interesting to see what we've got available now. And it seems to be working, you know. I never thought when we started to do the roundtable to talk about that we would even, you know, have people attend in person. But that was added in today to try to do that. And we've got 21 people online that otherwise wouldn't be here. So the technology is there. We are the ones that have to adapt to it. What she's been described, I had the same reaction when I first heard about it. I don't know. You know, we're not. Our fire went for 40 hours. We need to listen, look at it. And look at the evidence, the research that they put into this in Montana to get it. It makes complete sense. So I think that's one example of something to look at.
And that's volunteer career.
Yeah, yeah.
I pay my full-time guys to go out and attend the class. You know, that's time spent away. That's usually mandation hours and having another full-time guy cover that time spent. You know, plus the travel time, you know, I have to give them time to go out and digest that information. I'm just missing my mind.
That's one thing that's exciting. There's options and there's evidence that it's working. Evidence that it's important. Now, all of that requires some pretty big changes in state law. So that'd be, you know, some discussion that happens, but we're excited by the possibility of being able to get to that. Whoever thought we could get firefighters from the freaking limited. But it's possible. Other comments?
Marshal, there's an online study in
Okay.
Athens County. Athens County says, hey, the firefighters get their firefighter 2 training in exchange for a commitment to years of service with their local volunteers.
Anything else in there?
Okay, anything else online?
Yeah, Donald wants to speak and I haven't been able to figure out how to.
And my name is Donald Alexander. I'm Fire Chief for Wayne Township in Muskingum County. Been in the fire department in October, will make 50 years. And my concern is the amount of in-service training that the state's requiring for the volunteers. Perfect example, I have a kid that's 18 years old, joined my department, got his 36-hour card, graduated high school. He's getting a real job. He's going to be an electrician. He doesn't intend to go to college. He's going to stay in our community. He wants to work here. He works currently 10, 12 hours a day. And he's going to whatever union type training they require to get your journeyman master electrician card, whatever all that stuff is. He's going to class on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights and all day Saturday. So he doesn't have time to participate to get any in-service training hours from September to May.
Donald, could you start over?
My name is Donald Alexander. I'm Fire Chief for Wayne Township, Duncan Falls Fire Department in Muskingum County. In October, I will have been in the fire service for 50 years. My concern is the amount of in-service training that's being required for the volunteers mandated by the state. Perfect example, I have a kid that's 18 years old, went to high school. His dad's on the fire department. He was a junior member. He got his 36-hour card. He's going to be an electrician. He wants to stay in our community, has no desire to move away, go to college, anything like that. Very hands-on person. He is going through electrical school to get his journeyman card, master electrician, whatever terminology that is. But he goes to class on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, and all day Saturday. So from September to May, he's not able to participate to get any in-service training hours. So he got a few this past summer, but in the end of 3 years, he's not going to have 54, and I don't want to lose him. I'm tired of the state mandating hours for us to do stuff. That should be up to local level.
Okay, we've heard that a couple other times in similar.
I'm gonna have to mute him if you're gonna talk.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Are you complete, Donald?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I think if the local people had more control over who gets recertified, because I have people that I know have renewed their card, don't have enough hours. But the people that really need to renew, that are good people that you want to keep and are honest people, they can't renew their card. I think the control needs to be at the local level, not the state level for that stuff. It's great that we got everybody up to this firefighter level 1, level 2 stuff. But the local communities down here, the people we have to choose from, don't have enough time to do that level 1, level 2 training. They want to join the fire department. You tell them, well, you got to take 36 hours of training. Okay. And we'd really like you to do firefighter 1 for 150 some hours, or 180 some hours. I'd like you to do another 80 for firefighter 2, et cetera, et cetera. The pool of people we have to choose from is the same pool of people that's sports leagues are competing for to be their coaches, or the Lions Club in town is competing for them to be a member there. And people that want to serve their community can find easier ways to serve their community than being on the volunteer fire department. We have all these other restrictions.
Thank you, Don. Anything else there?
Nathan, Grand Roofer, Fire Department. Yeah, he's just reiterating the amount of hours required for initial training versus their chosen profession, example, welding school. Talking about continuing education.
I forgot to mention to everybody, this entire session has been recorded routine. So it'll be on our website probably sometime Monday, I would think, Rachel, Monday, Tuesday.
we'll have it posted. So there's a record, but you can also go back and hear and look at some of the comments. One of the things I do after the meetings is I'll go back and look at all the comments that I've just gotten to monitor in this environment. All right. Do we have any comments from task force members that are online? We've got 10 task force members online. Okay. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. 12:45. We've gone a little bit. Okay. We want to keep going, or is everybody, are you comfortable with, yeah, go
I got a
ahead.
couple things.
Yeah.
I'll make it as quick as possible. And some of us, are so I'm not gonna go too far into it. But you mentioned some changes in potentially in the training grants and how those are paid. I think that would be a big benefit. One of the things that we see a lot from our aspect is the Fire One grant money is awesome. We submit for it, you get it, it's covered, it's done. But the reimbursements, a lot of departments struggle with that because of budgets and are even making their people pay up front, then reimbursing them down the line to some point potential. So a potential to incorporate more of the certifications into prepay grant funding would be a lot nicer, or at least start refunding a reasonable amount of time. Like the Fire One's a prepay. I submit how many people I have in class and I get a chunk of it. The department's not putting the money up front. It is covered through the grant and it's through the time process of the grant. So the department's not having to put $400, $800, $1,200 out of their pocket. Oh, 6 months are being generous. So when you submit for it in January, and you get it, it's got a little bit better since Ashley's taken over, but it's still March, April, whenever you get it.
And if they do a 36-hour clock in January through March, wait until December and the end of the year to put in for it. A year after.
Yeah, if the class carries over, you know, if you started in December and finished in January 1, it's the next cycle before they can put in for it because the class was finished in the new cycle. So getting that money back into the departments has been difficult. And I know from the Marshal's office aspect, internally, people have tried to get it to where maybe it's paid out or half. And a lot of that was always dictated from the people cutting the checks, that that's just too much work to do that. But I get it, it's a lot of work. But it's really difficult for some departments to be able to put that money out on students, especially we're trying to build up. I mean, we've got a couple of departments that we'll get 3 and 4 and 5 students in every class that are coming from that department because they have the turnover and then just adding, trying to build on their department. And, you know, $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 every single time is a lot of money to come out there. To wait when they know they're going to get the money back through the grant. But there's that delay of what could be up to 14, 15 months to get the reimbursement. So being able to maybe look at putting it sort of the same process as the Fire One, or at least, you know, pay by half, a quarter, whatever can be done to help get that money back in the funds quick to make it. But then give us some money. From the division of BMS, a couple of things there. Reciprocity is that we talked a little bit about it. Simplifying that process would be so much nicer. And then IEPs. Yeah, the process to use an IEP is absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason to even have to submit to request it to read a test to a student. It doesn't make any sense. One, they're still taking the test. The proctor that's giving it to them has no fire knowledge. What does it matter if somebody reads it to them or they read it off of the screen? Why do they have to have a valid IEP to be able to do that? Then to put a requirement in that an IEP can't be outside of 5 years. If anybody in here has an IEP, I'm not trying to be offensive. You don't get better at reading after being out of school for 5 years. If anything, it deteriorates because you're not reading as much. So to put a 5-year mark on it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because then outside of 5 years, they have to go try to get reevaluated. The process to find someplace to reevaluate and then the cost for a reevaluation is ridiculous. So they also have the stipulation that you can also have a medical doctor somewhere, which I think was kind of an accident because that was really for physical accommodations, but it doesn't say that, so it is what it is. But go to a medical doctor and say that you would like for them to write you a note for accommodations for somebody to read a test to you. most of the doctors we get, or most of the students we have to go do that, the doctor says, that's not in my purview, I can't do that. Except for one doctor that I did have write a note that said the guy doesn't have to take the test at all and just give me the certification. But I was kind of not to pass that on. But the process, and we are seeing more and more students that are either had an IEP or should have had an IEP in school that didn't because of their age, how long ago it was, or the school just completely missed over the fact that they needed one. They aren't being allowed to use it. We give it to them in class because I can give accommodations in the classroom to whoever I want. But when they get to the state exam, they're having to suffer through trying to take that state exam in a classroom with everybody else on a computer, which a lot of them struggle with computer activities as well. And then on top of it, struggling to read through it. And there's just no reason for that to be in there. Being able to either make it so that the test is audible, so they can put on headphones and it will read the questions to them themselves, which tons of places have that. That should not be a big deal for the state to do at all. Or allow the proctors to be able to read the test to the students without jumping through the hoops. Timelines have gotten better, but one time it was taking the minimum 30 days that they tell you is the maximum to get it back because it was going to this legal, to HR. And for what? We specifically make proctors non-certification. They can't help the person cheat. I mean, I guess they could, but I'm probably not going to listen to somebody who don't have business. So why make it so difficult for those people to get the assistance that they need? And to be honest, from the charter standpoint, I'd love it if you guys would make the test audible, because that way I wouldn't have to pay a proctor to come in and do a completely separate test every time somebody with an IEP goes through, because they have to be in the room by themselves with the proctor. And they can do it in a room with everybody else, assuming that they can handle that. But most of the time, they need that separate space because somebody is reading it to them and to assist them in the process. So I think changing the IEP rules would be a huge help, because so many people that need that additional assistance on tests would be able to get it. I have at least one, if not more, students in every single class, one that tried to submit an IEP or had one, and it's growing really. There's multiple in every class, but I have at least one out of the ones that submit, if not more, that are not approved because their IEP is outside of 5 years old. And it even says right on the application, if you would like for it to be evaluated, potentially allowed, explain why. It doesn't matter what you put, they deny it every time because it's outside of 5 years, even though they give you the option to request. So I think that would help a lot, because a lot of the students that we see not gaining the certification are students that have IEPs or should have had IEPs using them. I know you guys are making changes to the instructors, and one of those may be the pre-test, I hear.
Yes.
Which is great. I like it, but I don't like it. It's a mixed bag, but if they don't change it, they need to do something about the refresher for people who take the test 3 attempts, making them take the fire kit completely over again, and the refresher just over the top. It needs to be some type of refresher built out, which actually I'll just roll into CE requirements. On the EMS side, you can take a refresher class. That's kind of a building class, it kind of slims down your hours a little bit. Why have we not developed a refresher CE course for the fire side that a student can go take? And instead of having to have 54 hours, maybe they can do a 24-hour refresher course, where the times altogether is potentially going to be a lot more effective because it's able to be built out and have hands-on and the pertinent things included instead of whatever department decides is fire training. And there are a lot of departments that will do, you can wash a truck as fire training. I'm not arguing that's not fire training. You check a truck, you're making sure everything's where it should be, you're doing those. It may help to make the training and the CE requirements actually better training instead of just a box that we're checking off every 3 years to make sure that we keep our certification. Non-certified firefighters on a fire scene and responding. I get it. I understand it to some extent, but at the same time, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I know letters have been sent out. There's been things coming out from prosecutors that if you're not certified, you're not allowed to go to the fires. You're not allowed to be on a fire truck. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. Why? They're not fighting fire. They're outside. That's a learning process. That's part of learning what to do. That's part of the game. So why are we telling firefighters that are waiting for a class to come up or maybe mid-class that they can't go participate? There's still rules in place to say that they're not supposed to go inside and fight fire. They're not supposed to do that. If the department's violating those rules, they're probably violating the rules allowing them to go anyway. So what does it matter? But to say that a firefighter that is in training or waiting for training can't go to a fire scene to see what goes on, maybe help move hose or help out on the outside, it does not make a whole lot of sense to me. On the full-time side, it's actually almost more ridiculous, depending on how you look at it. They're hiring in, waiting for somewhere to go. They're getting paid to be at the station, why not be allowed to respond to assist? And under the rules, the way it's written, they can't do anything until they are a firefighter. On the volunteer side, the wording is a little bit different. They're still putting out the same rules that you can't do anything if you're not certified. At the same time, the rule says you have a year to gain certification on the volunteer side. So I think they just need to reevaluate, trying to bust all these departments down. I get the guys never getting their certification. But to take a guy that's waiting to get a certification or even in certificate in class and not allow them to participate and actually see what goes down and actually get a visual of fires just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And it's something I think they need to look at.
There was a follow-up to your comment about the instructor qualification. Athens County is asking if you can elaborate on the changes for instructor qualification. Does it include a decrease in the years of service? That may increase participation. I don't know who that was directed towards.
Probably.
Yeah, so yes, we are currently rewriting fire rules right now, which is a very long process, to rewrite them and submit them for approval through the legislature, so on and so forth. But, we are moving to, it will be a fire and emergency services instructor, designation to follow NFPA. In fact, we're behind NFPA. And so with that, we are looking at, again, this is the direction we're heading, is that the knowledge exam to become, whether you want to be EMS having to take the national registry or the fire knowledge exam, will go away. Because the whole idea behind the fire and emergency services instructor 1 and 2 is that you can go in, and if you hold those qualifications, you can go in and teach on the fire or EMS side. And actually, there's hope that we will also encompass law enforcement in that as well. And so basically the direction we're going, it's not there yet, is that if the designation or the qualifier, if you will be you can teach fire if you have a fire service certification, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, so on and so forth. On the EMS side, same thing, you have to be a certified EMS provider. If you let those go, you can still teach the instructional methodology part of the course. So you don't lose everything, but you can still teach how to be an instructor. But if you've not maintained your certification, then you only teach the instructor methodology. So, of course, we're looking at that because we hear loud and clear that, wait, I'm maintaining my firefighter and/or EMS certification, but then I still have to go and take the knowledge exam when I already did that to become a firefighter or EMS provider. So with those concerns that we've heard, along with the NFPA designation of fire and emergency services, that is the direction we're heading. So hopefully that will make it much easier. And then again, that will also, because we have a lot of law enforcement personnel who they're in law enforcement, they're also a firefighter and/or EMT paramedic, so on and so forth. So to answer that question, that is the direction that we are heading. Now, as far as the continuing education to be an instructor, not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, because to be an instructor and then never teach a course, there's some concerns. But that's the direction that we're heading. So we hear loud and clear, and we're trying to make changes to that.
I mean, I know with the product last 20 years. I know with that continuing education is you have to do an in-service. So like the highway patrol does a yearly in-service. So that yearly in-service takes care of that.
Right.
And then you have to teach at least 3 different classes.
Right.
It can be a driving class, 3 different times, but you have to teach that 3 different times. And that does it for your 3-year or 3 or 4 year period of your product. And it's pretty easy to do that.
Right, yeah, and that's the one thing that we're looking at, because if you're not familiar, the law enforcement OPATA certification thing is just totally different from what we know in fire and EMS. And the Attorney General is the one, am I right? The Attorney General is the one that dictates year by year what your continuing education requirements are. So this year maybe 5, next year it could be 20 hours. And so that's the one thing that we're working towards as well.
That's, I mean, with that side of it, every agency is required to do that, what the Attorney General says.
Right.
So if then the Park Service comes out and said, well, this year, we want to focus on ventilation.
Yeah.
For like an in-service for your fire department, it has to do at least a 4-hour class of ventilation for that year. Then I could go toward continuing education and help with these certificates.
Right.
And then like, if Aaron needs someone or another agency needs an instructor to teach, ropes one day, well, that's part of his 24 hours that he has to have the teaching time.
Correct.
To get that.
Correct.
And that's another issue I had too, is like mine with my foster certificate. To get my fire instructor, now I gotta go all the way through the fire instructor class, which is probably the exact same instructor class that I have in the pub.
Right.
But I can't submit to get my fire instructor class because you don't accept their fire certificate, which is the exact same class.
Right.
Which hurts a lot of people, I think, especially in our area down here. Big instructor, I can't because I have that on file certificate instruction that I've had for 20 years. I maintained.
Way Ohio does it for everybody's benefit. They've got a piece off the basic training broken down into units. So it's the equivalent of our firefighter. So you're certified to teach a unit at the driving school. You're certified to teach a unit in the fire. Legal procedures, that they're all separate units, like what our modules used to be. So in essence, you've been trained to teach one module, not all of them. So, well, we're encompassing and we do it all on the law enforcement side. Audit certified for a particular unit. You can get certified in all of them. I don't think there's many out there.
Driving, firearm, self-defense, taser.
Yeah, there's a few, but that's how they broke it. That will be helpful. Back to Aaron's point about the 36-hour no training, them on the target, all that stuff. We have a couple counties in Ohio that we know people have been brought on as volunteers. They've not received any training. They're waiting for the 36 hours. So they're in that 1 year period of time. We also have been made aware to us that those people are going inside to do an interior with no training. None. And I'll tell you, in 2 years, a little more than 2 years of fire marshal, I've been to 9 line of duty death funerals in Ohio. 9. None of them have been volunteers. Nothing would. But I'll be damned if I want that to happen to someone. That's wrong. And those chiefs that are doing it, I hope they understand the liability that they're under as well as their trustee. I hope they understand the liability that they're under. Because if something happens, it's going to be very, very painful. So it is happening. The good news is isolated. But we also have prosecutors that don't want to do anything about it. In fact, we talk about it, they don't want to do anything about it. So that's where we kind of have to self-believe each other, I guess, a little bit. If you know, if I educate somebody and convince them to not do it. But yeah, I hope that never happens. Hope it never happens, which is another reason why we need to look at that whole training. Anything else? Folks, at 1 o'clock, we're done. Yeah. One more thing. One more thing. If I got my 10 time here.
It was not great. Down to, I think I'm down to 1. First of all, Ted Kinzel was a God among men.
Yeah, he is.
He is
I'm not.
an absolute godsend to the division BMS.
Yeah.
And has completely changed the interaction people have with him. Not to sound mean, but it used to be miserable to talk to division BMS.
Yeah.
It was almost like they were trying to take certifications away instead of helping people keep certifications, which is what they should do.
Yeah.
Ted is absolutely awesome and he deserves a raise and maybe like a crown or something to wear.
Do me a favor.
Play the sport too.
Do me a favor, please don't tell him.
I know.
You would be impossible to live.
I tell him every day.
Oh, man, that's why.
But no, Ted is a fantastic guy,
Yes.
and overall, the division BMS, I would like to say openly that it's completely different dealing with them now than it was 5, especially 10 years ago. A lot of the new people that are up there are so much easier to work with and are truly trying to help rather than hinder. And it's actually nice to have that coming out of Division BMS. So, the last thing I would.
All right, we're to number 11.
And I didn't introduce myself. My name's Aaron Dupree. I'm with the City of Wilson Fire Department, and I'm the program director for our charter agency in town. We run everything pretty much. And then we are teaching a high school seniors only fire one class now, which is kind of different high school students stuff. But it's getting there. And when you get good ones, they're good ones. But I think one of the things that I would like to see, and I think a lot of the charters would probably agree, that it would be nice to see more assistance coming down for the charters. With running a charter, it is very limited on what I can do funding wise, because I have to keep it reasonable enough price wise for departments to be able to send them here. And especially keep them in that ballpark of what they're going to get back or what they're allotted for the course. But the cost to run a program is not cheap. We have been very lucky, and I think the state immensely for the burn facility that we have. We had assistance from the state in getting that facility. Outside of that, though, there's very little assistance coming down, especially to other charters as well that haven't been lucky enough to get the help that we got getting the burn facility. The bigger problem that comes in is, one, the back end of the cost of the facility to continue to operate. And the other side is still, even with the amount of facilities that have been popping up, because there are more coming around, it doesn't cover the state. I know the academy's getting ready to do a very large project, and they're hoping to get the money funded, which I think is great. The only downside I see to that is, much like everybody here has said, south of 70, we're in West Virginia. That the academy home branch services central Ohio more than anything else. Because to be able to go there, to run the numbers, the people who go there for hands-on training that utilize the facilities are a lot more central Ohio than they are spread out around the state. And the academy does have some great noble crops. The problem is they're few, and being able to book them is becoming more and more difficult because there's not that many of them to start. So for us, for a state that has, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 departments now, spread out over 88 counties in a very large land area. You have one fire behavior lab, one fire trailer, a driving simulator, which I think you guys are aware of another one, I heard anyway.
We're expanding the entire curriculum program. And it's the most economical thing we can take on the road.
Yes.
It's a lot better to support that local than it is a freaking.
Exactly, and that's why I think it's something that really needs to be focused on, is getting more out around the state. And of course, I'm a charter, so I'm going to recommend it, but I think working more with the charters to try to help get them facilities into their areas to help do some of that training rather than either you got to go to Central Ohio or wait a year to get the straight ones available. Might be a nice way to start spreading out training outside of just Central Ohio. Because it's hard to get up there, and a lot of the classes are through the week. There's not nearly as many weekend courses as there are weekday courses.
You might be surprised, it's not all Central Ohio, it really is. We're getting firefighters from all over the state. Because we've got the statutory requirement to provide statewide firefighter training. So we're getting the firefighters on a 2.12 and in the end, we're getting the fire department sending their personnel tools for their basic training on a regular basis.
What's the percentage of volunteer full time?
Well, I mean, those are all full time, but we're serving multiple sectors. So for multiple sectors, there are different solutions. There's not one shoe for everyone.
No, and that's why getting outside of just the Central Ohio landmark is so important, because, I mean, on average, and I don't know the exact numbers for the state, but nationally, we're about 75% volunteer, 25% full time.
I think it's about 70.
Yes.
Here again, our direct delivery trailers are out every weekend. They're out during weeks too.
Wait, that's the thing, but
There's no lot of that. That's what we're going to expand.
Yes.
That's what we're going to expand.
So we do about, we train about 10,000 firefighters a year all across the state.
That's all, simple one.
No, I know, no, I've worked in the. Yes.
Not two thirds, but 10,000 people was off campus through the trail. So we're actually, so within the next 12 months, we're going to, it's the same problem. On the it was down, we struck a rail, which is by partnering with the other charters in the state, that might be very helpful. And we've actually started with that, so that two, but starting with that, two things we talked about. Well, we would see more than the call.
All right, everybody's getting rested. Don't be hope. Okay, hope this has been beneficial for everybody. We've heard a lot of things that we've not heard at other round table discussions, and that's what we want. Anybody from the task force want to have any closing comments, thoughts, or anything?
I do. Okay. First of all, thank you all for coming here. We're fortunate enough to have this meeting in our area for a long time. Don't be the person that comes to a meeting today and as he walks out the door says, I wish I'd asked this question. You took the time to come here. The people online the same way. You took the time to come here or be on the meeting, be in the meeting online. Don't let the opportunity pass you by to get too bogged down the road and say, I wish I'd asked this question, or I'd make this comment. Because this type of meeting won't come to our area that often. So please use this opportunity to pose any sensitive comments. That's all I'm asking.
And that's a good point here. And if you think of something later, don't keep it to yourself, send it to us. Get it to Aaron, he can get it to me, get on our website, call me, I've got a card, if you want a card. Send it to us, and we'll make your comments part of the permanent record. We had several people that could be with us here today, that could be online, to send it, essentially written testimony of their concerns or whatever. So, yeah, don't let it be, Aaron's right, don't let it pass it up. I appreciate your time being with us today. Aaron, thanks for helping us coordinate it. The chief, thanks for making the facility available to us. It's perfect. Now I'm going to sound a little touchy feely here for a minute, and going to kind of do one of these things, but I'm going to make an odd request. When you go home